By the way, Donald Trump is holding a press conference, and we're going to get into that after I blast off, or rather, I'm going to get into it right now.
A country in Russia's position could allow them, just in their position, could allow them to join NATO.
So let's do it!
And long before President Putin,
Did Thamazia send a playlist?
Russia was very strong on the fact that, I believe that's the reason the war started, because Biden went out and said that they could join NATO, and he shouldn't have said that. As soon as he said that, I said, you know what?
Weirdly enough, maybe Trump will save Imran Khan. Who knows?
This is a war that would have never happened if I were president. I think Biden is incompetent, and I think when he said that they could join NATO, I thought that was a very stupid thing to say. I thought when he said, well, it depends if it's a minor incursion. In other words, it's okay if Russia does a minor incursion. I thought that was a very foolish thing to say. The other thing that got it started was how badly Milley and these.
Why would Trump of all people save Imran Khan? Because he's a base he's a base third worldist, dude.
I was going to pull out, but we were pulling out with dignity and strength, and we were going to take our equipment with us and everything else. They are.
Don't joke about that. Pakistani Americans voted for Trump because they believe he will release him. Wait, really?
That mess, and he said, "Wow, this is a great time. I'm going to go in." But what the Americans said, I'm not blaming Americans, but I will say what they said had a big influence on his deciding to go in. Yeah.
The most Latin American president of our time? Oh, 100p.
As an American CEO, or did he do so as a representative of the U.S.?
I just don't think that Donald Trump does things that are like
about me?
Inherently
Elon, I don't know.
The diametrical. Not true at all. Most young Pakistanis in my community didn't vote because of Gaza.
Because of the tariffs. They have the highest tariffs just about in the world, and it's a hard place to do business.
Wait, hold
I would
on.
imagine he met.
Let me blast off real quick.
Because, he's running a company. He's doing this as something that he's felt strongly about for a long time, because he sees what's happening, and he sees how the country is really being hurt badly by all of the fraud, waste, and abuse. Yeah.
So how do you know whether he's meeting with a CEO or meeting with a representative of your government?
Well, he's meeting with me in a little while, so I'm going to ask him that question. All right? I'll ask him that question. Yeah.
What should we expect, sir?
And it's not going to be a big shock to the system, but what it's going to do is it's going to bring pharmaceuticals back to our country. Much more important than the money. It's a lot of money, but it's going to bring pharmaceuticals back to our country. It's going to bring chips back to our
Remember
country.
to end Turkish hate.
It's going to bring.
We will never end Turkish hate. Turkish hate will always be. Turkish hate will always thrive in this country. Okay, here.
During the campaign, they were going to build the largest.
Blasting off, ladies and gentlemen. Let the people know we're live. We're alive. Let them tell them to get in here.
Me make that statement, and they thought I was going to win the election. Actually, it was a few months before the.
Pakistani Americans thinking Donald Trump would free Imran Khan is so perfectly in line with the way that Donald Trump operates, where probably sent out feelers to the Pakistani community somehow and signaled that he would do that. Okay, so every old Pakistani American immediately locked onto it. Okay, it's no different than him going to Dearborn and being like, I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna finish the Gaza stuff. I won't tell you what I will do, but I'll finish it. You know what I mean?
I say it, and I say it.
Like that's classic Trump. Just like, giving federal recognition to a Native American tribe and then permanently locking them as Trump supporters, like that one specific tribe. It's always he does this stuff all the time.
4 or 5. To me, it's the most beautiful. And I'll tell you what, I think really reciprocal tariffs, those 2 words, reciprocal makes tariffs really fair.
Yeah, reciprocal tariffs.
Right? It would be all auto imports?
Any exemptions, no, because you don't need to. With reciprocal, you don't need to.
What does that mean?
Do you have an update on the TikTok negotiations?
Yeah, we have a lot of people. Well, I have 90 days from about 2 weeks ago, right? And I'm sure it can be extended, but let's see. I don't think you'll need to. We have a lot of people interested in TikTok, and I hope to be able to make a deal. I think it would be good. People have learned it's very popular, and we'll have to probably get approval from China to do it. But we have a lot of people that are interested, and a lot of people. I think China will be interested because it's to their benefit too. So I look forward to that. But we have a lot of people that are interested in TikTok. Quite a few.
Super popular.
Workers arrived today. Gavin Klager and others arrived today at the IRS. Do you expect to close the IRS, or what are you expecting?
No, I don't expect it, but
the ERS.
but I think
Someday.
I think that Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody's going to be looked at. So they're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing. And you know, that force is building. I call it the force of super geniuses, but it's building. And you know, they go up and they talk to some of the people about certain deals, and the people get all tongue-tied. They can't talk because these people get it. They're very smart people. We need smart people. Yes. Brian?
On tariffs, sir.
Yeah, Brian?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I know that during the campaign, it was huge in Pennsylvania as far as bringing back manufacturing. Have we talked to any CEOs since the tariffs were announced on steel and aluminum?
They are in love with it. As you know, in Pennsylvania, U.S. Steel is through the roof. They're all through the roof. That's why I didn't want U.S. Steel to make a deal with Japan or anybody else. I think it's going to do great. But I think maybe more than anybody else, the steel companies and aluminum companies, they're in love with what's happened. And this will eventually be the car companies and chip companies. We have to have chips made in this country. Right now, everything's made in Taiwan practically, almost all of it, a little
Sell
bit in
Texas
South
to
Korea.
Japan, Pog.
But everything,
Yes.
almost all of it is made in Taiwan. And we want it to be made. We want those companies to come to our country, in all due respect. You know, they took the business away. Taiwan took our chip business away. We had Intel, we had these great companies that did so well, and it was taken from us, and we want that business back. We want it back in the United States. And if they don't bring it back, we're not going to be very happy.
And you
Sir, on
mentioned
tariffs, are you-
pharmaceuticals as well in China. That's national security to bring that back.
Yeah, China and other places. We want to get the pharmaceutical and drug business back into the United States, where it should be. Right?
On tariffs, are you concerned that the countries that would be most affected, like India, would just shift their trading to China?
No, I'm not concerned about anything, really. I mean, I'm just doing what's fair. This is a very fair thing. This should have been done a long time ago. I would have done it, but then COVID hit. I was getting ready to do this years ago, and first term we had the most successful economy in history, and then COVID hit, and this was going to be the thing that I was most waiting to do, but it was awfully hard to do this with Italy and France and Spain, and all those people were dying, and then we put tariffs on. I have a big heart.
Sir, on Ukraine, when Putin says that he really wants peace, do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I mean, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President
I
Putin?
believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject. I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did. And now all those cities are knocked down, like demolition sites. All those beautiful golden towers are knocked down. There's nothing going to replace them. But much more importantly, you lost millions of people. A lot of soldiers, but you lost millions of people. When they knocked down those cities, and they're all laying down on the side, they're laying down just in ashes and all crumbled up concrete. They literally look like a world-class demolition site. And many of them, almost all of them, but many of them, and this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours. He's a friend of CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility. Okay, who else? Yes, please.
Sir, if you can find a buyer in the United States for TikTok, do you think Xi Jinping will authorize the sale of it, or will he?
I'm going to make it worthwhile for China to do it. I think so. I mean, I got to know TikTok because during the election, I ended up with 36% higher than my opponent with youth. Okay, that never happened before. That's always been a Democrat thing, youth. It became a Trump thing. And I think TikTok, I think Joe Rogan was a part of it. Some of the great people that I did interviews with were a part of it. But I think that TikTok was I think it was a big part. Look, as you know, we were up by 36% with youth. The Republican was never up with youth. And I focused on TikTok, and I found it to be amazing, actually, and very fair. And I think the image of TikTok is different than it was before the election. I think people saw it, and they view it as a positive, not a negative.
No
His
one saw it
advantage
as a negative, dog. That
had
was
the
just,
deal be made.
that was not a thing.
What money do you think you'll raise from tariffs on an annual basis?
That's the most interesting question. I think it'll be a staggering amount.
He keeps saying that when he literally lost the youth vote. Yeah, he's he's wrong, of course. He didn't win the youth vote by 36%. He got 36% of the youth vote, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a significantly larger percentage of the youth vote than he had gotten prior. He still lost the youth vote, but there is a significant number of Gen Z voters that voted for Donald Trump. It's true. It's a dangerous trend line if you are worried about Republicans winning elections, for sure.
Important things. Space Force, the biggest tax cuts in history. You know, this could be one of the most important things that we've ever seen.
I mean, there are very few things that Donald Trump says that are correct. Or I guess sometimes he will say the truth. Oftentimes he'll say the truth when it's like something that people get very mad about. But it's just like American foreign policy where he'll be like, yeah, you know, we're going to do ethnic cleansing and it's going to be awesome. Like, that is just American foreign policy. That's been the American foreign policy. He just says the quiet part out loud. But outside of that, he rarely ever says the truth. Oh, he got 46% of the youth vote, which is up 36% up from what he got in 2020. Okay, thank you. I got the numbers wrong. But I mean, he did not get the majority of the youth vote.
I think Putin would love to be back.
So why exactly can't he stop the war now? Feels weird to blame Biden for something happening under Trump's watch.
It's very possible that if that was the G8, you wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. And if I was president, you definitely wouldn't have had the problem with Ukraine. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. But you ask a very good question, the G8. It used to be the G8, and then these people...
No, he didn't get...
out. And I was...
He didn't go from 10% to 46%. Hold on. I'll look it up. I'll look up the numbers in a second, okay? Hold on one. We'll get to that in a moment.
Prime Minister Abe, a great man from Japan, agreed with me 100%.
Because today I'm going to be covering Trump's favorabilities anyway.
And
we'll get to that.
Terminated. I think it would have been very helpful, and it still would be helpful to have Russia be a part of that mix. And I think if they were, I don't think you would have had the problem that you have right now.
Russia is part of the G20.
They kicked them out, of course, because they illegally annexed Crimea. I mean, how would you have responded if Russia invaded or took over?
They took Crimea during Obama. 2014. They took, well, now they're looking to take the whole thing. Then they took a big chunk of land and people, as you know, during Bush. And now they're trying to take the whole thing during Biden.
During Bush?
Know, the only one
is he talking about like Georgia or something?
That took anything with Trump, nothing, not 2 inches of property of land. But Crimea was Obama. And then Bush gave him a lot, if you remember. And then, in fact, it's a sort of a standard little phrase. And Biden's giving him everything because this is a war that shouldn't have been had. And the only one that didn't give him anything is Trump. It's the way it is.
There's been some nervousness on Wall Street about the impact.
I think Georgia was in Obama as well. Georgia was during Obama as well, but it was due to George W. Bush. I think he just got that wrong.
You know, other countries want to have a strong United States. They want to have a strong America. And I think it's going to make us very, very strong, much stronger. And we have a lot of work we're doing on the military. Our military already, I've authorized some contracts to be built that are very substantial. We're building the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest military equipment in the world. We're building it. At some point,
Georgia was summer of 2008. I was in D.C. that summer.
And I'm going to meet with Russia in particular, those two. And I'm going to say there's no reason for us to be spending almost $1 trillion on military. There's no
Georgia
reason
was at the end of Bush's second term.
$400 billion. China's going to be at $400 billion. We're at $1 trillion. We're going to be at close to $1 trillion. And I'm going to say, we can settle this on, we can spend this on other things. We don't have to spend this on military because, and I'm going to be meeting with China. You know, we were trying to de-escalate nuclear, and I was in a position where Russia had agreed and China had agreed we were going to start, and then we had a rigged election, so that never took place. But this one was too big to rig. We won by so much that it was too big to rig.
Would it be the China meeting in the United States, or would you travel to China for that?
For what?
A China meeting.
I tell people all the time, you know, the question is who's going to have the first meeting, where are you going to, I say this to Putin, to President Xi, I say to everybody, it never bothered me, you know, I'm willing to say I'll go first. It doesn't matter. It's the end result that counts. So it doesn't make any difference.
When do you want to have a conversation about global defense spending, you, China,
Well,
Russia?
I'd like to have that, as soon as things settle down, I'm going to have that conference, primarily with China and Russia, because those are the two that really are out there. And we're going to have them spend a lot less money, and we're going to spend a lot less money. And I know they're going to do it. They agreed to it. We were talking about denuking, denuking, and President Putin and I agreed that we were going to do it in a very big way. There's no reason for us to be building brand new nuclear weapons. We already have so many you could destroy the world 50 times over, 100 times over. And here we are building new nuclear weapons, and they're building nuclear weapons, and China's building new nuclear weapons, and China's trying to catch up because, you know, they're very substantially behind, but within 5 or 6 years, they'll be even. And we're all spending a lot of money that we could be spending on other things that are actually, hopefully, much more productive. Hopefully, there'll never be a time when we need those weapons. If there's ever a time when we need nuclear weapons, like the kind of weapons that we're building and that Russia has and that China has to a lesser extent, but will have, that's going to be a very sad day. That's going to be probably oblivion.
Do you see that as separate conversations, or do you see one giant summit with you, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, I could see that. Let things calm down a little bit. You know, when I left, we had no Middle East problem. We had no Russia going into Ukraine. They never would have done it. Putin never would have done it. And I came back and we got like the whole world is blowing up. So when we straighten it all out, then I want to have one of the first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia. And I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half, and we can do that.
Remember when you said the Homeland Security, our
do
Gulf
that.
of America thing was being overblown? Yeah, I mean, they're petty as fuck. This doesn't change what I'm
Do you really go
saying.
after that spending as well? That's been
What are you
We have to
talking
go
about?
Waste.
This is
fraud,
what
and
they're
abuse.
doing
Yeah,
with
and we're
that,
doing that.
but it's overblown in terms of like, it's not that significant of a difference. It's just like a silly aesthetic thing that they did.
No, it's the people. It's President Putin, President Xi. I don't need bodies. I don't need anything. It's people. It's all about people. It's about relationship and people. And, you know, I've had a good relationship with President Putin. I've had a good relationship with President Xi. It's about people. And I think when things straighten out, which I hope will be in the not too distant future, the meeting I want to have first
They will
is a
not
meeting
cut
with China and a
the
meeting with
military
Russia
spending.
on slowing down, stopping, and reducing nuclear weapons in particular, and also on not having to spend the kind of money we're all spending on weapons, military weapons generally.
I think my question is, would you have those meetings separately with each of those leaders, or would you try to bring them all together?
Both. You start off separately, and that's what was happening. I was dealing with President Putin. We had really an understanding where we were going to denuclearize. What a beautiful term that is, right? Denuclearize. What a great thing if we could do that. And we were going to. He really
A
liked the idea of something like that.
denuclearization agreement
We
would
had
literally
involved China,
make Donald
and
Trump
China was
the
very open to
greatest
it.
peacekeeper of all
And then,
time.
COVID hit.
It's of course
and then
not
we had a
going to
rigged
happen.
election.
And the idea
there was no rigged
that it would
election.
ever
Now we
happen
have a-
is pure fantasy.
So my whole
But
thing
he
was too
would
big to rig.
absolutely be
They tried,
worthy of
but
every
they didn't
Nobel
vote.
Peace Prize going forward if that
Would you also
institution
direct
actually
agencies to study the
truly
impact it
gave
would
peace
have on
prizes
businesses in the
to
US?
people who were peacekeepers in
There's
general.
nothing to study.
Okay?
There's nothing to study. It's going to go well. The United States is going to become a very, very strong economic.
Can you imagine
economically country.
Donald
Yeah.
Trump facilitates the denuclearization of the entire planet? Yes, the same way you said Russia would not invade Ukraine. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I like that. I like that you guys can only harp on one note over and over again. That's what I mean. Yes. I wonder why you can't point to any other things aside from that, because it's always wrong, regardless of how much you fucking cry about it at the time. I hope I'm
minute I
wrong.
mentioned
I just
that-
don't think that, Donald Trump will ever denuclearize the United States of America.
Biden in particular, I guess he said that, they have us over a barrel. They don't have us over a barrel. We have them over a barrel.
world without nukes
If
would be
BRICS
much
wants
more
to play
dangerous?
games, those
What?
countries won't trade with us. We won't trade with.
What are you saying? A world without all nukes? What do you mean? What is happening? No, objectively, not having world-ending weapons would be a good thing. Okay? What?
Mitch McConnell has now voted against several of your nominees. He voted against RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories.
He's kind of writing
What's your
away.
reaction to
Stop hitting the mutually assured destruction. We're talking about the evisceration of all nukes, okay? It is pure fantasy regardless, but you're out of your mind. No, stop talking about mutually assured destruction being the only way to keep peace in the world. And that is what is like kept the world safe or whatever. Look at Ukraine. Look at Ukraine. Please understand. Look at Ukraine. Russia has nukes. America has nukes. There's a reason why Russia and America never actually engage in straight battle. Okay, what's the difference for the people of Ukraine? You make it seem as though countries do not engage in war with one another because they're nuclear powers. Okay, that still doesn't change the dynamic of war. I mean, I guess it changes the dynamic of war a little bit in terms of like countries getting into battles with one another. But the notion that without nukes, Russia and the USA would have gone to war, USA would have suffered 1 million casualties in Japan. Oh my God. Oh my God. It is, no, I disagree with you. I disagree with you across the board, okay? Especially like as it stands currently, if you are a developing nation, you do have to have a nuke in order to avoid American intervention. But the alternative vision for a better world would be that no one has nukes.
Lost his power, and it's affected his vote. And, you know, it's one of those things. But in the meantime, Bobby did great, got more votes than anybody thought. And I think he's going to do phenomenally, just phenomenally in that position. And everybody else likewise did well. Not only well, they got more votes than anybody thought. Tulsi, look at how she did.
He doubted Mitch
great.
McConnell ever had polio.
Marco
That's
got
amazing.
99 votes. How about that?
He's faking it.
Marco got 99 votes. And Marco, by the way, I have to tell you, Marco Rubio's done a fantastic job. He's been a great Secretary of State. They're all doing great. But we're going to have a swearing in today, and maybe we're going to have a second
The idea, if we're discussing complete denuclearization, the idea that countries would be better off with nuclear proliferation is an inherently cynical ploy, okay? You need to understand. If the conversation is about what's currently happening, then that's a totally separate conversation to have. But if there was a serious initiative towards denuclearization, and your argument is like, oh no, mutually assured destruction has kept the world safe, the idea that the world has been safe during the Cold War, or the idea that the world is currently safe, is ridiculous. It's only safe if you are in America. It's only safe if you are in the heart of empire, if you're in the imperial core. It's not safe at all for other countries. That's ridiculous. It's the notion that like, oh, we don't have world wars anymore. It's like, yeah, we don't, but there is never a moment where America is not engaged in some kind of war. It's just you're sheltered from the immediate impact of such things.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can say, oh, dude, there's like, you know, you can rewind if you want. He's been taking questions for 10 minutes before he tuned in. No, it's fine. Especially because nuclear proliferation being the one thing that stops global powers, like superpowers, from fighting one another is ridiculous, because you have this cynical approach then where you automatically assume war is a constant. It is an inevitability. Like nuclear deproliferation would be, or denuclearization would be, one very unimaginably significant point towards global peace. He's not equipped mentally, Trump says of Mitch McConnell, saying he never really had it. I don't know anything about he had polio, Trump says. Are you doubting that he had polio? I have no idea if he had polio. Delusional, out of touch LA millionaire take. That's amazing. Yes, I am a delusional, out of touch LA millionaire. And that's why I think denuclearization is never going to happen. But in theory, it would be better for the world. 07? Oh, you're going to be banned for this brave take? No, you're not. I'm not going to ban you, little man. Don't worry. War is a constant. We are violent by nature. Come on. Okay. Yeah. You don't understand. Okay. You don't understand. We always have to constantly engage in war with one another. Mankind has never actually engaged in the collaborative effort. Yeah. What's human nature? Do you think skyscrapers are human nature? Do you think space travel is inherent to human nature? None of these things are human nature. Okay? It's ridiculous. Get out of here. I think explaining nukes aren't a deterrent is a hard thing to describe to people that believe it, because it's tied directly to the belief that many people have had that the world runs on being selfish and rugged individualism. I know. Yeah. It is a unfortunately incredibly cynical way to approach the world, especially if we're having a conversation about, especially when we're having a conversation about an alternative that will never exist regardless. But we're having a conversation about an alternative vision for the future. Okay, we are just as collectivist minded as we are violent conquerors. Exactly. It's about what you choose to highlight. Trump is live again. Oh my God, he's crazy. Oh, he's doing the RFK Jr. flex now. Okay, nice. Nothing works. RFK is actually breaking the broadcast. It seems. Holy what is happening? RFK has bricked the broadcast. What is going on? What is happening? There it is. Cheryl Hines is right there too.
The oath of office and officially become.
What is going on? Oh, they're rewinding the tape. Is there another feed? The RFK's alien brainworms are bricking the broadcast. It's over. Satan. RFK Jr.'s broken containment. This is not a drill. Oh yeah, it's over. As far as like, will denuclearization happen? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not saying that it will happen, but if you're going to talk about it in theory, okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that countries having world-ending weapons at their inside of their arsenal is a good thing. It's not. It is one of the most dangerous aspects of modern society. Okay? Don't let these people turn around and lie to you and make it seem like everybody having nukes is a good thing. Restart player by closing tab and reopening it. I don't think it's the player that's busted. I think it's the broadcast that's busted, chatter. Everyone else is having the same issue. What is the chat saying? DEI, Elon, fix it. Someone needs to be fired over this. This take goes against the Hasanabi doctrine. Yes. The Hasanabi doctrine is a totally separate conversation. Okay? If we're having a theoretical conversation about denuclearization, which is if we're having a realistic conversation, is never going to happen. But if we're having a theoretical conversation about denuclearization, yes, of course I'm in support of it. There's a difference between what is the reality and what is theoretically better. Oh, it's working now. Never mind, it's still not working. Thoughts on all the anti-woke leftists on X? I don't know who the anti-woke leftists are.
Kennedy Jr. take the oath of office and officially become our Secretary of Health and Human Services. Just as I promised last year, Bobby is going to lead a great national mission to make America healthy again, and he's going to do it. I think he's going to do things that will really make us very proud of this day. Like his father, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, Bobby has devoted much of his life to serving his fellow Americans in his campaign for president, and he was a very tough competitor. I did not like it at all. I said, let's get him on my side. But in his campaign for president in 2024, Bobby brought together a coalition of supporters across party lines, and he really worked very hard, and he had tremendous support, unbelievable support. And I think a lot of that support came my way when we decided to do a little merger, and it was really great. And it was very loyal, incredible people. They believe in him so strongly, because he's a fierce advocate for the health of our children and for the values of free speech, democracy, and peace. And people are going to be very impressed, I have no doubt. I've known him a long time. He's been a friend of mine a long time. Perhaps most importantly, though, Bobby created a nationwide movement made up of millions and millions of mothers and fathers and young people and concerned citizens of every background who want to end and this horrible chronic disease crisis that exists in America. He's absolutely committed to getting dangerous chemicals out of our environment and out of our food supply and getting the American people the facts and the answers that we deserve. After years in which our public health system has squandered the trust of our citizens, and they really have. They don't trust us. They don't trust anybody, frankly. They've gone through hell. There's no better person to lead our campaign of historic reforms and restore faith in American health care. And Bobby's going to do it. The United States spends more money in health than any other country on earth, but we're growing sicker every year. We're not as healthy as countries that spend just a fraction of what we spend, so there's something wrong. He's going to figure it out. In recent decades, we've seen staggering increases in cancer rates across all age demographics, including more than 40% increase in childhood cancer since 1975. Who can believe that? And an explosion in other chronic childhood illnesses. Not long ago, 1 in 10,000 people, children, had autism. Now it's 1 in 36. Think of that. 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 36. Who can believe that? There's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I think it's something that can be found out. In 2022, more than 40% of children had at least one chronic health condition, and today nearly 80% of young adults do not qualify for military service, in large part for health reasons. Think of that, 80%. Something is wrong, and that's why immediately after Bobby is sworn in, I will be signing an executive order establishing the President's Commission to Make America Healthy Again. We have some great people on that commission. Chaired by our new secretary, this groundbreaking commission will be charged with investigating what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic illness, reporting its findings, and delivering an action plan to the American people. And it's going to be a plan that people are really waiting to hear. Bobby, I want to thank you. You've gone through a lot. It's taken great courage.
Yes,
been
autism
amazing, actually.
autism
You're
increasing
going to be okay.
is not because of
And he said, "I know,
vaccines
I
or
really
the
did."
proliferation of vaccines.
Been
Autism increasing is a
supported amazingly by
diagnosis
Cheryl and his family.
increase.
And
That's
it.
it.
Was very tough. It was a very nasty.
Just that
was
diagnosis
tougher
has
and
gotten
he was
better.
smart.
Or Twitch streamers in general. Twitch streamers have increased autism.
The assault, but he was able to. So I just want to congratulate you, and we have a very special person here to swear you in. A man that I think has done just. I think he's just an amazing man.
It's also the same reason why it's mostly prominent in boys in general,
And he's,
or at least initially from the 90s onward. It was mostly prominent, seemingly only increased in boys. Why didn't it increase in women? Perhaps it has something to do with the social dynamic of a lot of the social conditioning that women go through, young girls go through, that make it harder to diagnose autism in women. Maybe that's the reason. Because it's not like women are getting vaccinated at a lower rate than men. You know? That's what's so stupid about it. It's because medical research around women is still, as a direct consequence of patriarchal constructs, significantly behind. That's it.
Okay, it's good so far. Good. It's a 10.
It's just a theory, though? What do you mean it's just a theory? What could it... There's nothing that, like, young men are experiencing that is, like, significantly different than young women in terms of, like, vaccines. Do you think that women are just not getting vaccinated? No, most of this stuff is just the same as the left-handedness argument, okay? Whether it's being gay, whether it's like more queer people exist now in society, what's that about? Or there's more autism in American society, what's that about? Like, virtually all of that is almost identical to the left-handedness argument. There's just a bunch of people who were left-handed normally, okay, and they were forced into writing and using their right hands. And once we stopped punishing people for doing that, there was a number of people that were left-handed, and it just stopped after a certain percentage. Yeah, the autism spectrum disorder is a vast criteria of different kinds of neurodivergencies that was put under the same umbrella, and also had significantly better ways of diagnosis, especially since the 90s, which then led to a massive number of boys becoming autistic. Why are they becoming autistic? I've worked with boys with autism specifically, okay? And I can tell you, their parents were definitely autistic. The only difference was their parents were not diagnosed with autism, okay? That's it. They just weren't diagnosed. The notion that there is a ginormous disparity, yeah, some might say I still work with a lot of men with autism now, but the notion that there is this gigantic disparity between men catching autism versus women catching autism immediately undermines the vaccination argument. Okay? That's it. Like, a lot of your parents have, some of you who are autistic have immediate family members that suspiciously have lifelike model trains. Okay? They have an entire room dedicated to model trains, and that doesn't even ring any alarm bells in your mind about an autism diagnosis for your uncle, okay? Or for your dad. What the fuck do you think is going on? Yeah, that boy is autistic as hell, okay? The only difference is he grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s where he wasn't diagnosed. Oh, no, you don't understand. He's just quirky. He just quirked up. He's just got his, key interests. Oh, yeah, okay.
Who was president and where we talked about the environment. He was involved deeply, as we all know, in restoring physical fitness in this country. He challenged at one point during his administration, he challenged Americans to do a 50-mile walk, which I ultimately did.
Have you ever seen a severe case of autism like nonverbal? Yes.
His walk.
I have. And yes, the parents weren't nonverbal.
And my father came in after 18
I know.
hours walking on the C&O towpath with his feet bleeding and blisters on them. My father had one of his best friends was Al Lowenstein. And Al Lowenstein ultimately was a congressman from New York who was assassinated.
Me and my wife actually got invited to do a study about genetics and autism because both of our kids are diagnosed autistic. I got pretty high on that test too. Yeah.
Get rid of President Johnson and end the Vietnam War. And at the time that he started it, people just thought it was a fool's errand. And ultimately, he asked my father to run for president against Johnson. My father wouldn't do it at that time, and he asked Gene McCarthy. McCarthy did it, and he joined that campaign. And my father ultimately ran, and Johnson then dropped out. So Al Lowenstein succeeded. And although Al Lowenstein was on the other side now, running against my father with Gene McCarthy, my father wrote him a note, a quote from Emerson, where he said, if a single man plant himself firmly on his own ideal and there abide, the whole wide world will come around to him. For 20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I can end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump. He's now given me, he's kept every promise that he's made to me. He's kept his word in every account and gone way beyond it. I'm so grateful to you, Mr. President. A lot of people told me that I couldn't trust President Trump, I better get it in writing. And we did a handshake, and everything that he told me he was going to do, he has done. And I'm so grateful to him, and I've told you before, I genuinely believe that you are a pivotal historical figure, and you are going to transform this country at a time when we see all of the indicia of democracy now in tatters in our country. We see the rise of the military-industrial complex, the rise of totalitarianism, these attacks on our Constitution, and this breathtaking epidemic that is disabling our people. President Trump has promised to restore the American dream in this country. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. 60% of our population has only one dream, that they get better. President Trump has promised that he's going to restore America's strength. But we can't be a strong nation if we have a weak citizenry.
I love that this man is the beacon of health, okay? I need you to understand what you're seeing right now, this man on screen, okay? This man right here, that's the beacon of health. Do you understand me? He's the healthiest boy that has ever existed.
And has the spine and the guts and the strength.
The reason why he looks like a rotisserie chicken that has been left out for too long is part of the reason why he's so healthy. It's the drugs that he took.
President Trump has shown again and again that he is that hero. And most recently, I greatly appreciate, and I called you the day that you announced the termination of USAID. My uncle started USAID in 1961. For humanitarian purposes, to put our country on the side of the poor. It has been captured by the military-industrial complex. it has become a sinister propagator of totalitarianism across and war across the globe. And very few people understand how sinister this agency really is. And President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke. And we want to do the same thing with the institutions that are stealing the health of our children. We need a revolutionary figure, and you are that figure. And
Yeah,
I'm very grateful
that's
for
right.
you for
The
giving
revolutionary
this
figure of Donald Trump.
Likewise, some of the allies that I've had in this battle for a long time are Senator Rand Paul, Senator Ron Johnson, Senator Roger Marshall, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Thank God.
and Buddy Carter, who've all been champions of the Maha agenda before I even came along. I'm very grateful for you for standing strong. Thank you very much, President.
Despite that, what plans do you have immediately now that you're sworn in, sir?
He's going to be running it. He's going to do a great job. Find out a lot of secrets that have been maybe kept from us, but he's going to come up with some solutions to some big problems. So,
Could you please explain why this administration is making a show going after the military-industrial complex? I don't remember anything like this during the election, and it seems like the Republican base won't support it. They're not. They're not. I'd be shocked if they actually did. Okay? Virtually everything they've done thus far is not about undermining the American military-industrial complex at all. If you look at where they're making cuts, it's shit like the NIH. Okay? They're not making cuts on anything. They're not making any cuts on, like, think about it this way, chatters. They quite literally also sanctioned they signed off on additional weapons to Israel. That was one of the first initiatives that this administration has made. I can't think of something that is more wasteful in terms of spending.
When people actually hear what I think about vaccines, which is common sense, which is vaccines should be tested.
If they ever cut funding to the military, it will be for veterans, okay? They'll say that they're undermining, the American empire or whatever, or at least that is how it will get presented in mainstream news. But the only thing they'll ever cut is veterans, spending on veterans' health care, things of that nature. Spending on veterans' housing, veterans' health care, maybe even college. As far as like what they talk about in terms of like the American military is so wasteful and we have to cut it, that's just populist sentiment, okay? They understand that a lot of people recognize the American military as a incredibly costly initiative, but that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Let's go quickly, please. Quickly, guys, come on.
The only other thing that I can foresee them doing in terms of like military spending cuts, I think, would probably come in the form of what are they doing with the nose thing? That's weird. Would probably come in the form of like maybe hiring more private contractors and outsourcing existing military operations to mercenaries. That's it. I don't think that they would offer significant cuts to the military because the military is attached to the hip to the military industrial complex, and it's a massive sector. It's there's too much money to be made. Anyway, yeah, from here on out, anyone who wants to set healthcare policy for America needs to be able to bench press their body weight, pass a law Congress. First of all, RFK Jr. can't bench press his body weight. We saw how much his bench looked. We saw what his bench press looked like. And it's shocking. It's been shocking because I think so many people, even in the physical fitness industry, have been captivated by the way he looks and hasn't really looked into the functionality of RFK Jr.'s muscles, because the irony, no, he's not Natty. He does TRT. He's Mr. TRT. Okay. The irony is that like when he was working out in jeans in this video and he did a bench press, he did an incline bench press with, I think, weight that is significantly lower than someone that looks like that would be able to put up, especially with all of the, this is
superficial.
What is this? Oh yeah, this reminds me that NL said he doesn't trust folks like you.
I don't trust any journalist with biceps that big. I don't think he's serving the people. I think he's serving his own vanity to some extent. I'm not saying you can't be jacked and be a good public servant. It's just something, it's the reason that I'd be watching Kitchen Nightmares instead of Restaurant Impossible. Chef Robert Irving is too fucking jacked for me to take his opinions on cooking seriously. His soul is divided between the passion of running a restaurant.
Wow. Oh, okay. So this seems like a direct shot fired in my direction from Canadians that I think are sitting on a lot of valuable land right now, looking to be annexed, looking to be liberated. Okay? I'm just saying, oh, you should only hear out the political commentary of maybe bald and not super in shape commentators. Yeah. You know what? I was on board. I was on board of with defending Canada from American annexation, and now maybe Canada's looking like it needs to be liberated from the treacherous grips, the treacherous throes of socialized medicine. Please, if you try to come near Canada, the first snowflake would take you out. You doubt the Peloton?
Passion of running a restaurant and the passion of taking steroids. Now, Gordon takes his shirt off every episode in Kitchen Nightmares. He's in good shape. He's obviously, I think he's showing off a little bit, but he's not like, you know, Hugh Jackman jacked. He's like middle-aged man who exercises jacked, okay? There's a difference between that and the vascularity of someone like a Chef Robert Irving.
This is a direct attack, comrades. This is a direct attack against the Hasanabi community. This is a direct attack against me, Hassan Hasanabi Piker. Okay? I am under attack. I'm under attack. I saw this already. I saw this earlier. Hassan stream titles be like, huge news, new Zelda, impending civil war. Yeah. We're going to war with the Lion of the North, okay? Double shots fired. Okay, one of my 2025 goals is to do a collaborative stream with Northern Lion before America permanently annexes Canada, okay? We have to do this. We have to do this to instill the brotherly bond between our fellows up north and the American proletariat. This must happen. We have to do it. I mean, I love Northern Lion. You guys know this, all jokes aside. And yeah, I'd rather die than learn French. Brother, I don't think you would have to learn French. Don't make me choose who to support in this war. Little Bear, we all know you would go with Northern Lion, okay? We all know that. Bro, you need some trap muscles. You kind of blank there. Dog, I have an incredibly wide frame. It makes it all the more difficult to have beefy trap muscles. Anyway, are you a partisan of the FLQ? I am. If America tries to annex Canada, you don't understand how hard I will be in the tank for Quebecois separatists, okay? Will they want my, Muslim adjacent support? I do not know, but I'll still give it to them regardless. You don't understand. What's with the new camera angle? Haven't watched this Japan. I dig it. Yeah, I wanted to maximize more of the space that I have in here. Is it a bad camera angle? I disagree. Okay, all jokes aside, I am in support of the Quebecer separatists in their effort to decouple from the horrifying Anglophone oppression. It's doubly horrifying if you consider the American Anglophone oppression that could happen. Okay? Yes. I offer full support. All right. Is Donald Trump still doing press conferences? I believe he will continue with the Modi press conference in a little bit. But let's get started on Ukraine. Donald Trump coming in hot and doing things about Ukraine that European leaders feel sidestepped on, seemingly.
On Russian television, they could scarcely contain their glee.
Quebec.
Against a backdrop of an American prisoner released from a Moscow jail this week, the anchorwoman asks, has Russia been promised Kyiv or Odessa? President Trump, she says, has an excellent friendship with President Putin. And what about the
Northern Line is not acknowledging your comments. Disrespect is real. He can disrespect me if he wants. I still love him.
Ukrainian president visiting a proposed nuclear power plant? President Trump called him after speaking to President Putin last night.
It's important that everything does not go according to Putin's plan. He wants to make all his negotiations bilateral between him and the United States, but we, as a sovereign country, simply will not be able to accept any agreements taken without us.
But this was Trump on Ukraine a few days ago.
Like, the difference between Trump and Joe Biden or any Democratic leadership is that a Democrat will never actively say, will never openly say the truth. They'll never say Ukrainian autonomy is insignificant in this process. They will, as a matter of fact, consistently say we are behaving in the interests of our incredibly important allies. But the reality of the matter is what Trump is saying. It doesn't matter what the Democrats say. What matters is what the Democrats do. Just like it doesn't matter what Trump says. What matters is what Trump does. Okay? So while Democrats will maintain the aesthetics and maintain civility, yes, of course, they also did not listen to the demands made by Zelensky on numerous occasions. Zelensky kept asking for more weapons. Zelensky kept asking for different kinds of weapons, air support. Zelensky wanted to do a flight-free, like they wanted to create a security zone above Ukrainian airspace. Okay, they wanted to do a no-fly zone. This would require American and NATO forces to constantly fly over the area and blow up Russian flights, blow up Russian air cover. Okay, this would have been this would have obviously been a hot war between nuclear powers, NATO nations, the United States of America, and Russia. They never did that. Okay, Biden gave billions to Ukraine. What the F are you talking about? My point is, regardless of what Ukraine's demands were, no matter how moral or how just, so giving Ukraine to Putin is the same as not supplying every request by Zelensky. What the F is this take? Okay, you are failing to comprehend the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that Ukrainian interests in this process, I'm gonna walk through this slowly but surely. Okay? There were plenty of needs that Ukraine had after the invasion. Okay? The Democratic administration did not abide by all of those needs. The Democratic administration did not turn around and give everything that Zelensky asked to Ukraine. Okay? They never would turn around and be like, Zelensky doesn't order us, we order him. They would never say the truth of the matter. Okay. And some of you, I think, were, you fell for this consent being manufactured. You fell for this idea that like the Democrats actually did care about all of the emancipatory needs of Ukraine and that it was actually a moral interest that America had. It was not. And I kept repeating this over and over again. Okay. Donald Trump turning around and saying the quiet part out loud does not change the dynamic. Okay? That's it. Fell for it again, award back-to-back champion. Yeah. You should remain neutral in politics, Hassan. Thank you.
You know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal, they may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday.
The new U.S. Defense Secretary at NATO today may not aim to have Ukraine as...
This is the difference between Donald Trump also undermining U.S. aid. Okay, yeah, I should stay neutral like Asmongold. I should stay neutral in politics like Asmongold, which would require me to just watch Donald Trump and go, yeah, that's pretty based. Yeah. Anyway, you should just tell people you are a centrist while holding all the same views. Yeah, I am. I'm a centrist. I'm a neutralist. I'm just objective. But something that a lot of people fail to consider here is that the situation in Ukraine is not, at this stage, the situation in Ukraine and what will happen in Ukraine is dictated by the terms of the battlefield. Okay? As in, there's two different options here. Will Ukrainian conscripts, will Ukrainians living outside of Ukraine right now, Ukrainian men living outside of Ukraine right now, be forcibly deported back to Ukraine in order to be conscripted into the military and basically reinvigorate the Ukrainian defense forces because they need manpower more than anything else? Or will there be a land swap agreement and inevitable end or an inevitable cessation of hostilities? Okay, you can criticize the Democratic Party without also blaming all of Trump's ridiculous things on them as well. I'm not blaming what Trump is saying right now. This is not even a criticism of the Democratic Party. This is a criticism of American foreign policy. Okay? You don't believe the weapons and billions from the U.S. government had a significant effect on Ukraine defending itself from invasion? No, of course it did. It probably stopped. It definitely stopped Vladimir Putin from taking Kyiv, okay? 100%. It played a pretty major role, especially in the interim from 2014 onward, where Ukraine was able to build a standing military, played a very significant role in them stopping Russia's offensive campaign. I think it definitely played a role. Having said that, however, after that fact, there was one instance where they talked in Antalya on a 15-point plan that fell apart, and ever since then, Russia has been able to take more and more space in eastern Ukraine, move up eastern Ukrainian positions, annex key parts of eastern Ukraine in sham symbolic annexations and ridiculous elections that they're holding, okay? While simultaneously destroying Ukrainian farmland, mining the shit out of eastern Ukraine, and hardening their positions. I thought you were pro-Russia. No, I'm not pro-Russia. Why would you think I'm pro-Russia? I've never been pro-Russia. Please stop relying on drama content creators who have no understanding of politics whatsoever. Okay? Jesus Christ. I can't believe we're 3 years into this and people still come in here and they go, oh my God, I can't believe Hassan is not pro-Russia. That's so shocking to me. I thought he was. How hard is this position hardened by a democracy today and what? Find out. Side of black pill to go? I don't know what you're saying. Okay. You're a communist? Potato, potato? Yeah, exactly. Because of my communist background, I am, of course, in support of the communist kleptocracy that is modern Russia. Certainly a communist country, certainly a socialist country, led by the Marxist-Leninist Vladimir Putin, famous communist. Anyway, I don't think that there is a tremendous difference. I don't think there is a gigantic difference between what any administration would do in this process. The only difference here is that Donald Trump will, again, say the quiet part out loud and defend it, even though it is indefensible. But that is because American foreign policy is often indefensible. The aesthetic differences are identical to the U.S. aid gutting, okay? Now, Donald Trump says he's going to completely undermine U.S. aid, in which case, is he actually going to stop clandestine operations overseas or stop sending aid to other countries? Yes, he will most likely stop key aspects of aid going into other countries, but in reality, they are most likely going to centralize U.S. aid and still continue U.S. aid style operations. It's just that America is responding to its standing around the world changing as the global hegemonic superpower, as the cop, as the universal police force of the planet. America has lost a lot of soft power capabilities, and Donald Trump is accelerating that change to all hard power, all military, all stick, no carrot. That's it. Okay? I think this is a genuinely dangerous change. Can you explain what soft power versus hard power means? Yes. Soft power is when you do nice things for other countries and therefore garner goodwill. I'll give you an example from China. China sending Sinovac to the Philippines is an example of soft power. Okay? Soft power works hand in hand with American military might and American military capabilities. Okay? It's the carrot versus the stick. The carrot plays a pretty big role because it causes, or at least it creates an environment where 800 military bases all around the world in foreign countries is not seen as 800 separate American military invasions, but rather a security cooperation and a security partnership. The Ukraine-Russia line has mostly been fixed since 2022 to 2023. Russia gained 4,000 square kilometers of territory in 2024, which was largely meaningless, so it's currently a stalemate at enormous cost to both sides, of course. Russia gained 4,000 square kilometers of Ukraine in 2024. How many soldiers did it lose? Verifying casualty figures for soldiers in Russia-Ukraine war is difficult, as experts call it a war of narratives. But it's clear, Russia has lost more troops than in any war since World War II. Yeah, it is endlessly costly for Russia to consistently engage in permanent war in Ukraine, and it is of course also endlessly costly for Ukraine. The problem between Russia and Ukraine is that while Ukraine is backed by the entirety of the Western world, they simply have less people. No, they're not saying that they've lost close to the same number of troops in World War II. They're not saying that. They're just simply saying that the number of casualties on the Russian side are ginormous, more than any other country since World War II. World War II was like 20 million people. That's obviously it's nowhere near that. Okay. Doge is already dismantling the NED. This is good for the global south as a whole. We do not want your color revolution, says Top G. Yeah. Once again, I think the difference between what America will do in the future versus what America has done for the past almost century is that they just won't try to masquerade what they're doing as like a good thing. Okay, a thing that everybody wanted. Only when you witness the unstoppable march of 1.4 billion patriotic volunteers will you finally wake up from the pitiful stupor forced upon you by living in the imperial core. But a fake socialist like you will never visit China. You will remain an ostrich with his very small head buried in the sand. First of all, don't threaten me with a good time. Okay, don't threaten me with a very even though you are, you know, making fun of my head size, which is something outside of my control and only a consequence of my very broad shoulders, which I believe in most Asian countries is seen as a positive anyway. Don't know if it's the same in China as well. Okay. But all you are doing is highlighting that I will benefit from the Chinese century of prosperity. Okay. That's all you're saying. Anyway. If given the chance, would you visit China? I really want to. I want to visit China this year. Not exactly sure when I would do it, but I do want to do it. That is a certainty. You're a smart guard. Do you really think Kamala would have pushed for a ceasefire in Ukraine? Biden's deal was muscular liberalism, and Kamala was about preserving his legacy. I think muscular liberalism aside, the only thing that would be different is the aesthetics and how it is presented. Because once again, and I repeat this position over and over again, and I think I will have to repeat it over and over again, the only difference would be how it is packaged. Because the situation in Ukraine is not dictated by simply just like American interests or Russian interests. It is more so dictated by the terms of the battlefield. And if Ukraine is simply running out of manpower, as I've reported over and over again over the course of the past couple of months, and as the appetite towards more war is waning, regardless of the moral position that many Ukrainians maintain in emancipation from Russian invasion, okay? At the end of the day, there's a desperation that sets in when you simply don't have enough manpower. So unless you send in American mercenaries or something by the tens of thousands beyond the Foreign Legion, okay, and try to change the dynamic of this battle with no severe Russian response, no like nuclear Russian response or whatever. Running out of manpower is such an AI way to say such a grim thing. Yes, running out of manpower means Ukrainians are dying. Okay, that's it. That's what that means. I think the reason the U.S. is letting go of its soft power is because U.S. is now unable to use access to the dollar and Western markets to control governments. China is a far better market and they do better deals. Washington knows it's not the global hegemon. I'm afraid they will try to start a world war to stop China's growth. They just know trading isn't working anymore. Where is the sentiment that Ukraine is lost, though? I mean, this is not a sentiment. This is just a grim but realistic analysis of what the situation looks like in terms of Ukrainian manpower. That's why I keep repeating that there are millions of Ukrainian men that no longer live in Ukraine that got refugee status in the West. What do you do in that situation? Do you forcibly extract them and then force them back to go and pick up arms against Russia? Do you deport Ukrainian men from all of the Western nations that they went to, okay, and then force them to serve in the Ukrainian defense forces? Because that's the only way at this point. That or conscription for all Ukrainian men down to the age of 18 is the only way that you can maintain this this posture, this defensive posture. Or do you tell Ukraine that it's basically over? Russia, being this despotic authoritarian nation that it is, and being significantly larger than Ukraine, has the capacity to keep pushing men to the front lines in a way that Ukraine can't keep up. That's it. Russia just has more people. At the end of the day, wars are fought on the boundaries of attrition, and Russia has more manpower to lose. They're not even using their own people. They're using North Koreans. No, I think that's more so aesthetic partnership with North Korea, saying like North Korea also has a say in this, or North Korea also is involved in this. Are they using North Koreans? Yes. Is it partially because they've run out of a lot of manpower? Certainly, but it's not like a game changer for Russia at all, I think. Anyway, honestly, Ukraine has to convert into an attrition, anti-occupation, guerrilla war. Open field wars will always be in Russia's favor. Give them territory, then give them hell. I mean, as a Ukrainian, I can confirm your point that Ukraine has no more men, but from here to say that Ukraine has lost, it seems to me a somewhat pessimistic vision. However, the Ukrainians will not give in to Russia's demands if they do not at least concede something to Ukraine. I think the general feeling is better to all die than to surrender. In terms of loss overall, I think that both sides have lost a lot in this process, for sure. Like Ukraine has had, I guess, somewhat of a Pyrrhic victory, in terms of being able to stop the Russian forces. And there's a tremendous number of Russian combatants that have been slaughtered in the process as well. The problem there is when one side just has less people, what are you supposed to do? Is there actually any proof that there are DPRK soldiers in Ukraine? All I've seen are articles citing the Ukrainian and South Korean intelligence. I think that even the Russian side has admitted to using, or like all the reporting says that they're using it inside of Russian territory in terms of like internal defense in Kursk and whatnot. Some of it is like the Asian Russians, which exist, but they have captured some DPRK forces, from what I understand. I don't know if they're in the front lines on Ukrainian territory, but I've seen some videos even on Russian hospitals about like Russian combatants in hospital chilling with the what they claim are North Koreans. But then again, as this Al Jazeera article shows, it is a war of narratives. Not that it ultimately matters, because once again, it's not like a significant difference maker. It's more like, I would go so far as to say that getting artillery shells from DPRK for Russia was more significant in this conflict than the actual troops. Because I think a lot of people on the pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine side look to that and say, oh, it's because like Russia has incurred tremendous loss, which is true, they have, without matching that up against what the current Ukrainian defense forces look like. I think it's more so just a partnership that Russia has with the DPRK and reaffirmation of said partnership than anything else. There's a lot of FPV drone footage showing a lot of Asian combatants. I know, but Russian forces also have a lot of minority populations in Russia. There's ethnic Russians that are still Asian. So drone footage doesn't necessarily show that they're definitely North Korean. Not saying that there aren't, by the way. Most of Russia is in Asia. So like Asian as in like East Asian, like dudes who look like they could be North Korean.
Russian someday. But the very idea is an anathema to
You're talking about the indigenous populations like Tuans, Khakas, Buryats, etc. Yes.
everyone else in the room.
There is no betrayal there. There is a recognition that the whole world and the United States is invested and interested in peace, a negotiated peace. As President Trump has said, stopping the killing. And so that will require both sides recognizing things they don't want to. That's why I think the world is fortunate to have President Trump. Only he at this moment could convene the powers that be to bring peace.
But the Europeans fear a Trump-Putin stitch-up, which freezes both them and the Ukrainians out of any peace talks. For the EU's top diplomat, who comes from Estonia, a former Soviet state that fears the same fate as Ukraine, it's existential.
It is clear that
Estonia mentioned POG.
Any deal behind our backs will not work. Any agreement will need also Ukraine and Europe being part of it, and this is clear that appeasement also always fails. So Ukraine will continue to resist, and Europe will continue to back Ukraine.
Britain, which sometimes hovers between the US and Europe, is clearly in the European camp.
There can be no negotiation about Ukraine without Ukraine, and Ukraine's voice must be at the heart of any talks.
Some might recall a meeting exactly 80 years ago when the Soviet, British and American leaders, Stalin, Churchill and Roosevelt, met at Yalta in Crimea to carve up the world after World War II. War-ravaged occupied countries had no...
What's your favorite Houthi musical? What's your favorite bar from a Houthi musical? Play a Houthi musical for chat. It would probably be that. It would probably be the one that I showed Nick, where they were talking about how the American-backed Saudi coalition forces were doing a genocide in Yemen, and they were saying, "Send us more weapons if you want. We will never stand down." That one probably is my favorite. Yeah, they got diss tracks for days. I don't know why people think that this is like a massive own or something, especially considering that this is like not a issue to be hosted on any other platform, with the exception of Twitch's own terms of service being way more rigid than all these other platforms. You know, this is not a defense of the Ansar Allah movement's banner or their domestic affairs, but yeah, if you genuinely want to know, I think that the one where they were fighting against the Saudi blockade and the famine said, "You can keep killing our people, it doesn't matter." That one was a pretty good one. You've been cutting your oil with whiskey? Oh, for Saudi Arabia? If chatter is wondering, the name translates to "we don't care." Yeah, that's the title of that one, that musical work. It came off like he's saying you're a fake fan. Name 3 Houthi songs. Yeah, you're not a real leftist if you don't mask every day. Okay, don't know why you're bringing that up right now. I'm in my own house. Let's continue.
Say, the great powers decided everything. Might was right. And that's how the new US administration sees it too.
We can talk all we want about values. Values are important. But you can't shoot values. You can't shoot flags. And you can't shoot strong speeches.
Wow, bold.
There is no replacement for hard power.
That's he's really spitting.
Ukrainian soldiers on the front line aren't thinking about history. For them, it's about personal survival and the survival of their country. Because if Ukraine is sacrificed to Russia, what was the point? Why did their comrades die? The atrocities Russian soldiers committed in...
It's a great question. I agree. A question that I have wondered quite a bit myself.
Bucha, will they be not punished but rewarded for them? Ukrainian cities are still being bombarded. They desperately need peace, as President Trump says, but not at the cost of losing their independence or reaching a temporary peace, only for Russia to come back for more in a few years' time. The NATO family photo, but the family is divided. Europe, the Americans have made clear, has to increase military spending, and they can defend Ukraine if they like. America isn't going to. The post-World War II order is over. Get used to it.
Even the Red Army used soft power to fight the nationalists in China by promising things and giving things to peasants. Yeah, I mean, it was fairly easy considering that the KMT's vision for a new China was to reassert and reinstall the previous landlordship dominance over the peasant class, whereas for the Red Army, it was a complete restructuring of said hierarchy. So, even the peasants that worked alongside the KMT initially or filled the ranks of the KMT initially were like, okay, well, I don't want a fucking landlord. I'm going to go with the other guys. So, yeah, I don't even know if that's soft power at that point versus a genuine commitment to instilling change. Chiang Kai-shek was anti-landlord? Maybe initially. No, I mean, there is truth to the KMT's initial formation looking somewhat similar to, well, I mean, I wouldn't say similar to communism or anything like that, but like, yeah, at first, the nationalist movement was also a movement of change, moving away from colonial domination and reasserting. Remember, nationalist movements at this time, at this period, especially if they were colonial subjects, were liberatory movements. So the attitude presented or even the initial reception is going to be different. Anyway.
Lindsay Hilson reporting there. Well,
Thank you for voting for Trump. We needed change. Yeah, dude. I'm sure you think I voted for Donald Trump. Come on.
Seems to deliver another
Shonda Black, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream.
Bombshell from the Trump White House. Let's get more from our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy. Siobhan.
There were no bombshell.
Houthi banner being an issue is literally diluted Western moral panic. Palestinians and Yemenis living under occupation, genocide can't be anti-Semitic to Israelis. Maybe only the other Jewish Palestinians and Yemenis, but not to their oppressors. Like slaves can't be racist to slave owners. I think regardless of the ways in which I think Norm Finkelstein has a really good take on this, and I stand by his analysis on the issue. But it still doesn't change the banner being a curse upon the Jews. You know what I mean? And it's funny to say this because I suspect that they will most likely change it regardless, just like the Hamas charter changed as well. Like, yes, on that side of the world, Jew and Zionism is a substitute for one another because of their experiences with Israel masquerading as a Jewish force and doing this for Judaism. Having said that, considering that the Hamas charter also changed in an effort to be more modern, in an effort to be broadly received as an emancipatory force rather than like a terror cell, which of course that didn't really happen. But I think that will be a similar situation with like the Ansar Allah movement as well. Now, of course, the Ansar Allah movement would have probably had an easier time talking about normalized relations with the Western world in the initial steps of the Biden administration as Biden moved to take them off the terror list, which he did, only to put them back on the terror list when Operation Prosperity Guardian started. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. Don't know why we're talking about this, though.
Yeah, Matt, but it was interesting last night. Donald Trump in the White House was asked on multiple occasions if his peace talks with Putin would include Ukraine. And I have to say, he was non-committal.
Even if you rewrite the definition of racism like that, it's still prejudiced and wrong. What? No, anyone can be anti-Semitic? My God. I don't disagree with you, chatter. I understand. But you're doing an anti-white racism is real argument right now, which is weird. Like, the fuck? And also, there's never been a moment where I've defended the Ansar Allah banner anyway. That's not the point. I do think it's indefensible. And not just from, like, the Western perspective, but if you want to understand the context in which these sorts of opinions manifest, I will also explain that to you as well. All right, can we just continue with this conversation?
At best. At one point, a journalist pressed him on the matter. Do you view Ukraine, he was asked, as an equal partner in the peace process? The president looked stumped. It was as if he hadn't thought about that question. That's an interesting question, he said after musing for a while. I think they have to make peace, President Trump said. That was not a good war to go into. No sense from President Trump that Ukraine had no choice, that it was attacked by Russia. He was also asked at one point whether or not Ukraine would have to cede territory to make peace. And he said that Zelensky is going to have to do what he's going to have to do. And then at one point he said, yeah, I think they're going to get some of the land back. I think they will. Well, I was up on the Hill earlier trying to gauge reaction from senators as to the developments. As you can imagine, the Democrats are furious, while the Republicans were torn between trying to be supportive of Ukraine and trying to be deferential to President Trump. Let's hear what some of them had to say. Is America betraying Ukraine?
President Trump, not America. Please make some distinction between the two. Secretary Hegseth has apparently said in a meeting that the door for Ukraine to be admitted to NATO is closed and that they will not be able to recover their sovereign territory. If you go back and read Donald Trump's Art of the Deal, you don't give up the most important negotiating points before you begin negotiations in earnest. For us to concede those as a country, for the Trump administration to concede those, would be a betrayal of the thousands of Ukrainians who have fought so bravely and died for their country's freedom.
But what about the concessions? Europe is saying, why give up things before you've even started the negotiation? That's a betrayal.
In my conversations with President Trump, he wants Russia to lose, he wants Ukraine to win, and he wants the war to end. So I know he's working hard to make that happen.
So the negotiations will definitely include Ukraine at their heart?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I believe that.
Okay, at what point, like, why would you even believe any of that, by the way? It's like, are the conversations featuring Palestinians and their needs? No. Are the conversations never feature the people that are outside of the American American allegiances? Okay, they just don't care. I think it's crazy to think that, like, to act like what Trump says and what Trump does are directly in line with one another. I think it's silly to assume that they're going to give a shit about Ukrainians at all and what their actual opinions are or what their actual needs are. It never was the case, and I think that there is some cold hard truths to the way that Trump is operating, as is the case with many of the things that he says when it comes to American foreign policy. Something that I think I will have to repeat over and over and over and over again, as I did the first Trump administration. It's not correct, it's immoral, but it's the truth about American foreign policy. The only difference is it's stripped of the aesthetic reasons. It's stripped of the aesthetic permission structure that it creates for liberals. That's it. The greatest example that I use to this day is when Donald Trump turns around, when Donald Trump famously turned around and said, yeah, of course we're going to keep giving billions of dollars of weapons to Saudi Arabia. Who's going to buy the weapons? Do you have $1 billion? Of course I'm going to keep giving Saudi Arabia weapons. At the time, Saudi Arabia was doing a genocide in Yemen. Many of you probably didn't know that, but at least the Hasanabi heads in here that have been around for a while were familiar with this. That is the position of the American State Department. The only difference is there's no need to shelter the American public from the truth. He's just openly stating what it is. What is the case?
That Ukraine can win, that it can push back to regain territory, But
the message yesterday was, you don't have the United States.
The message yesterday was weak and pathetic, kowtowing to Putin, bowing and scraping. President Trump seems to be an admirer of Vladimir Putin, which is a nice way to put it.
Is America still supporting Ukraine?
Senator Van Hollen, be glad to answer your questions.
Do you support Ukraine still?
I do.
Well, I certainly do. I'm very worried about what happened.
We both do.
Does America support Ukraine still?
I've said it was a mistake from the beginning to send $200 billion to Ukraine. I'm still opposed to sending more aid to Ukraine.
Well,
he's like, I've never been a supporter of the Ukraine. Why are you asking me that?
Last thing, President Trump reiterated that he does plan to meet Putin in Saudi Arabia. He said that Putin would also come here to Washington, D.C., and that he would go there to Moscow. He was asked at one point whether or not he would meet Zelensky in...
I think my most controversial opinion on this is that, not dissimilar to what I've said about the Biden administration, knowing full well that the Trump administration was going to take the reins, or even the danger of the Trump administration coming back into power, the Biden camp should have packed all of this shit up. They should have packed it up in their own vision if they chose to do so, whether it be with Israel or whether it be with the Obama administration the first time around, ensuring that they put a Supreme Court appointment up there, no matter what the cost, considering that there was a likelihood that Trump might actually win and then do whatever he wants with the Supreme Court. Major mistake from the Democratic Party. Major issue with oversight. So even if you're a Dem, even if you're a NatSec Dem, okay, certainly I'm not. But let's say there are some national security Democrats out there, okay? There's plenty of pro-NATO Democrats out there. There's plenty of NatSec Dems out there, okay? How do you look at this? How do you look at the situation and think, well, the Biden administration probably should have packed all of this stuff up to ensure that the Trump administration couldn't come in and actually seize the reins of power and deal with it in the way that they want to. That's it. Same with Ukraine, same with Gaza, especially with Gaza, because there is a lot more power and influence that we have over Israel as opposed to power and influence that we have over Vladimir Putin, okay? A foreign adversary with his own needs, own material needs, and violent ambitions. That's it. That's my statement. So if you're here upset about Donald Trump assuming the role of assuming control over all of this foreign policy initiatives, remember that this only happened as a direct consequence of the Biden camp not actually doing what was necessary at the time when they had 3 years to change the dynamic, whether it be offering more weapons faster or directly meeting Russia and coming to the table and trying to facilitate some kind of ceasefire negotiation. Whether you believe that Russia will keep up their end of the bargain or not does not matter, because instead you just had no ceasefire and all war. Putin is going to reject the deal? I doubt it. I think that he has also incurred significant penalties, significant losses. So it is in his best interest as well to try and pack the situation up and solidify the boundaries of all of the territory that he annexed. I think that one of the biggest oversights in the Biden camp, from my perspective, was consistently saying, "Oh, we're not going to talk to Vladimir Putin. We're just not going to do that," which was a lie. They did talk to Vladimir Putin. They talked to Russian envoys when there was a hostage negotiation at play, but they never talked to any sort of Russian envoys when it came down to facilitating a ceasefire. I think that was a major oversight from the Democratic Party once again.
In Ukraine, again, he looked puzzled and he said, well, I might. He wouldn't commit to that. Matt.
Siobhan, you're all over those corridors of power in Washington. Thanks very much indeed. Let's go to Chris in London.
Well, joining me now is Timothy Milovanov, Ukraine's former economy minister and president of the Kyiv School of Economics.
That could have happened only before the elections and maybe even before Brandon dropped out. No, that's what I'm saying. That's precisely what I'm saying. That is what I mean. Yes, that's why I said there were 3 years where the Biden camp could have actually. You know what's ironic? If the Biden camp actually went in and said, "No, we got to talk to the Russians," I suspect that the statement, the attitude from Fox News and the Republican right would most likely be, "Fuck these guys. They're doing Obama-style apologia tour for an enemy of America," regardless of what Trump's rhetoric around this issue has been. Except, they didn't do that anyway. So here we are. Anyway, this is still coulda, woulda, shouldas, and there's a lot of that, but it doesn't matter. So why do the Dems need to be nice? What do you mean? Need to be nice? I'm simply stating that if the Democrats had a different vision for Ukraine and how it should basically end, then they should have implemented it, or at least tried to implement it. I suspect that they don't have that much of a different vision from the Trump cabinet regardless, because American foreign policy is uniparty, and the marginal differences from the Republican administration and the Democratic one is that the Republican administration has a different way, especially with Trump, has a different way of pushing their agenda, and they oftentimes will go further right and become more reactionary and fuck things up even further and get more violent, regardless of what they say they're interested in doing. The only way that any kind of conflict ends is if it's an inevitability due to the conditions of the battlefield. Afghanistan withdrawal is a great example of this as well. Negotiated by Donald Trump, implemented by Joe Biden. Donald Trump turned around and shit all over Joe Biden. Joe Biden pulling out of Afghanistan while following the conditions set forth by the Trump administration. Why did we pull out of Afghanistan? It got to a point where it was just costly for no reason.
Ukraine could say no to whatever Donald Trump agrees with Vladimir Putin?
Well, there are minimal conditions for peace on Ukraine side. One of them is not ceding more territory unoccupied. The second one is some meaningful guarantees, security guarantees, because if those are not there, what is there to negotiate or agree to? Just accept Russian conditions.
Yeah, this is the most Ukrainian man alive, is what someone said in the chat, and I agree. His name is Timofeev.
So something, for Ukraine to sacrifice, to make painful sacrifices, whatever they are, I think it is important that Ukraine gets something back, and Ukraine is an independent country.
So it could say no. I mean, the US Defense Secretary is saying effectively Europe has to be the security guarantor for Ukraine. Now, this just comes a couple of days after President Zelensky said, well, that's just impossible.
Well, yes, indeed. President Zelensky said, and I think that's true, that full security guarantees, real security guarantees, which prevent Russia from invading in a couple of years again, are impossible without the United States being there. Europe can provide, 50, 70, 80% of all, but that's, the US has to be there. Otherwise, the war will restart or likely to restart soon. So, yes, that's correct. And I think we have to bring the US in some form.
Do you think most Ukrainians will see this as a betrayal?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Most people see it as betrayal right now in Ukraine. The U.S. cannot be relied on. And also, President Trump appears to be very weak because he conceded to Russian demands before even getting anything out of it. So it looks like Putin has played President Trump. At least that's how it is seen from Ukraine.
It's also remarkable to hear politicians both in Europe and in Britain comparing this to appeasement.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it is appeasement. Peace through strengths. I haven't seen any strengths. No one has seen any strengths.
I love when Asmongold supporters come in here and go, how is this guy not banned yet? One, I don't even think Asmongold agrees with you in terms of getting me banned. I would be shocked if he did. But two, what do you mean? What do you want? He's already the largest commentator on the platform, largest political commentator on the platform. You just want no dissent whatsoever, no dissent, no leftist position to ever be reflected on this platform. Is that your argument? And if you're also not an Asmongold supporter and saying, how is this guy not banned? Then what is your expectation? Do you want Asmongold to be the only voice of politics on this platform? He already has developed quite the audience of right-wingers. What happened? I thought you guys hated cancel culture. Saying you are a leftist is a massive stretch. Who is a real leftist in your estimation? You personally say you hate Democrats. Oh, God, I love doing political commentary. The anti-capitalist leftist Democratic Party in the United States of America, as a person who is a critic of the Democratic Party for demanding that they do something, anything really. I myself am, of course, not a real leftist. Real leftists are the pro-Kamala, pro-Biden coalition that is currently doing what? Yelling at their base of support for demanding that they do things. Respect. Pro-Obama, I would say, is a leftist. M. Andre the Balkan, you are too stupid to navigate this type of conversation. Return to soccer talk and having a T-shaped hairline. American education. His name is Andre the Balkan. I don't think this is a American education, chatter. I have a full head of hair, man. Okay, the fact that he only responded to that means that he definitely has a T-shaped hairline. Respect. You can convert him here. He thinks the Democrats are leftist, dude. Okay, I don't think I can convert him. He thinks Obama is a leftist.
Strengths. People have seen weaknesses only in these negotiations, so to speak, negotiations, quote unquote. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Maybe it's some kind of very complicated and brilliant strategy to appease Putin in terms of rhetoric, but then in practice provide Ukraine with real security guarantees. I think this will become very clear very soon.
But is there a realistic alternative to accepting whatever Trump negotiates, given how reliant Ukraine is on the United States to wage its war? I mean, could Ukraine go back to war without America?
Well, Ukraine is in war right now, and what the U.S. is offering is basically nothing, or Russia is offering. I'm actually not even convinced that Putin is willing to stop the war, or he's negotiating in any good faith. What is clear, I think, de facto to everyone, and President Zelensky has spoken about it, that getting territory back at this point is not realistic. It has to be done through some other measures in the future. Then NATO, frankly, even under the Biden administration, that has not been on the table. I think here, President Trump and Secretary Haggis, they basically say what they say what the Biden administration has been saying behind the doors, but not publicly. The U.S. doesn't want to see Ukraine in NATO. So on that front, I think it is okay. It's just reality. The real question is, will there be...
What? This guy might be... Wait a minute. This guy might be a Russian operative who loves Vladimir Putin. I can't believe he said that. Wait a minute. This guy, but all of the drama farmers have told me that anyone who says those things is a Vladimir Putin supporter, like Hasanabi Piker, who's the #1 Vladimir Putin supporter of all time. It's interesting that the most Ukrainian man on the planet is also saying the exact same things that Vladimir Putin supporter Hasanabi Piker is saying. Why didn't the U.S. want Ukraine to be a part of NATO under Biden or Trump? For the same exact reasons that France and Germany also didn't want it either. They had for America it's different, but for European countries, they already had a long-standing energy partnership with Russia. They understood that this would be a red line that would be enforced by Russia if Ukraine was to be a part of NATO. Like, there is a level for global powers. There is a level of like how much they can enforce their will around the world. Like, there's still obviously some interests of foreign adversaries that they have to abide by. Like, that's it. Minsk agreements? No, that part doesn't really matter. Nobody ever fucking followed through on the Minsk agreements. People are so dumb, man. Why is asking the Ukrainians or the Palestinians what they would want be such a novel idea? That's never a point of consideration. Like, that's never a point of consideration. That's not how empire works.
Military and financial support for Ukraine? Will there be American weapons? And will there be any kind of troops in some form, in whatever form, to prevent Russia from invading in the future?
Exactly. I mean, if Ukraine were to reject a Trump offer of a deal and Trump pulled American weapons, can the war go on from Ukraine's point of view?
Yeah, it will. More people
Trump
will
is live
die.
with Modi, by the way, and we'll get to that after this video is over.
I think Russia will make some gains, but those will be incremental. I don't think there is any chance Russia or Ukraine will make any major movements on the front because the nature of this war with this asymmetric technology, with actually very cheap drones, is that making large advancements are very, very difficult, close to impossible. So I think even at a very low support level from Europe, Ukraine will be able to resist, but Russia will be making advancements.
Mr. Milovanov, thank you very much indeed. Matt.
Well, joining me now is Nina Khrushcheva, a professor for international relations based in New York and the granddaughter of the former Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. It's good to have you back on the program. Do you think Vladimir Putin, given this olive branch from the Trump White House, actually wants to end the war at the moment? Or do you think he's on a roll and wants to continue?
I think actually Putin he can end the war if conditions are fine, and it seems like now they're fine for him. He can end the war. He couldn't end this war if he's not a winner of it. He certainly could not be a loser. But now the winning can be presented because Trump called himself, apparently. We don't know exactly who requested the phone call, but it looks like it is Donald Trump. After
She
the call,
inherited his good looks. She looks exactly like him.
Donald Trump was all complimentary, talking about Putin and himself as we, and then referring to Zelensky and potentially not necessarily very recent.
That is the most Russian-looking house I've ever seen in my entire dang life.
Respecting terms. So yes, I think he wouldn't mind if conditions are right for him. And for now, they do look right, although there is a very long road, as we all understand, from the conversation to the actual ending of this war.
And I mean, the Kremlin today actually, tried to reassure Zelensky that he would be involved in negotiations. And we heard similar sort of reassurances from the White House. Are those reassurances to the Ukrainians and to the Europeans to be believed, do you think?
Well, I think if Zelensky, I imagine, I don't know what exactly they're talking about, but for Putin and Trump, or for Trump and Putin, we don't know who is going to be the first in this scenario. If Zelensky behaves, that's fine. He can be there. But if Ukraine, and actually in your previous pieces on this subject, it does say the West is going to stand with Ukraine for as long as it does. But realistically, if the United States withdraws, there is absolutely very little possibility that the war continues. Yes, it's going to be withstanding Russians' offensives, but Russians are going to take more territory. So they would not mind having
Not one picture on the wall, all mirrors. It's funny because it's like it's the only instance where there are so many mirrors that it actually has the opposite effect of what mirrors are supposed to do, which is make like the entire room larger, look larger, feel larger. But because there are so many mirrors of various different sizes, it ends up making the room look smaller.
Zelensky, but at the same time, we already heard Keith Kellogg saying that Ukraine needs elections. Is it a step to say that when we get to negotiations, it needs to be something else because Zelensky is too war president? He cannot be president of peace.
So do you think by calling for elections, they're kind of hoping that he would be voted out of office and someone more pliant might come in?
I would imagine, yes. I mean, I don't know what exactly they're thinking, but I would imagine that, if you insist on democracy, why are you not democratic? Why there is no elections? We even hear from Ukraine is that, Ukrainians themselves are now kind of concerned about Zelensky legitimacy, not in ideological way, the way Russians present it, but they themselves. I mean, because the war is not going too well. Zelensky promised that it will, and now it didn't. And, obviously the president will be guilty. So yes, but I'm not sure impliable, but somebody who is realistic, somebody you can have a conversation with, potentially Valery Zaluzhny, the Ukraine ambassador in London.
Right. I mean, the Europeans feel very kind of weakened by this. They feel as if they're the victims in this great power game. But they do have a card, don't they? They could fast forward Ukraine's EU membership, which is something that Vladimir Putin presumably would absolutely hate.
Well, the Russians said they wouldn't mind. I mean, I'm sure they mind it, but they really wouldn't mind because it's better than NATO. Yes, they can fast forward the EU membership, but then again, how realistically the country at war can be admitted into the European Union. So there is some card. But I mean, I have to say the fact that Europeans are so beaten up about the fact that Trump said what he said and the story goes the way it goes, it's kind of shocking to me because clearly they're not thinking, or they're living in la la land. What did they think is going to happen? Trump is going to come in and say, oh, have all the weapons in the world. And they themselves really are not contributing as much as Trump would want or America would want. And then they say, oh, no, but we are with Ukraine. Fine, be with Ukraine then. I mean, that's what Trump is saying. Be with Ukraine, do it on your own if you're all so brave.
Nina Khrushcheva, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We could be at a turning point in the war in Ukraine. President Trump says that he and Vladimir Putin have agreed to start negotiating the end of the conflict. After speaking with Trump, Ukraine's president says no one wants peace more than Ukraine. Nancy Cordes is at the White House with the latest on this. Nancy, good morning. A lot of people are wondering if President Zelensky is involved in these conversations with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Right, and President Trump left some question about that yesterday in the Oval Office, Gail. He did say he is serious about brokering a peace deal to end the war, but he also suggested Ukraine would have to make some big concessions and give up some territory, even though it was Russia that invaded unprovoked 3 years ago.
I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear.
At the swearing in for his new director of national intelligence, President Trump said he and Russian President Vladimir Putin have big plans to meet and start negotiating.
We expect.
Watch Trump take Ukraine, the war stops, and 2 years later gives it to Russia as some sort of deal he made with Putin. Definitely something I can see Trump do since Ukraine isn't a part of the talks, it seems. No, I don't think that that'll happen. I think what'll happen is what he's been saying, which is that there will be some kind of security cooperation with Ukraine where I don't know if it'll be like mercenaries or private contractors or something. And he will extract as much natural resources out of Ukraine as possible in the process, which I think corresponds to the American agenda, the foreign policy agenda across the board in Ukraine, no matter who's in charge.
1 + 1, 11, and not 2. And this is the power of 11 that is going to work for the welfare of the
What the fuck?
मैं राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का मेरे एक अच्छे मित्र का हृदय से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि हम फिर से एक बार प्रगति की राह पर नई ऊंचाइयों को छूने के लिए चल पड़ेंगे.
I once again thank my friend President Trump, and we together resolve that we will together march towards progress and towards prosperity for our nations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. He's doing a great job in India. Everybody talks about it. He's doing a really fantastic job. A great leader. Great leader.
Remember, foreign policy uniparty, it's not like the Democrats were anti-Modi either.
तो के लिए और मुझे है कि भारत का हर नागरिक आपकी इस भावना का आदर करता है.
I thank you for your warm words, Mr. President, and I firmly believe that every person in India respects your sentiments.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks a lot.
Any questions, please?
Yes, President. You are both very popular leaders in your respective countries. You've spoken about a common sense diplomatic doctrine. So what's that Trump-Modi doctrine that we should expect from the meetings today? To make
Trump doesn't know India is a part of BRICS. Trump thinks Spain is a part of BRICS.
Everything else will be the unity. We have great unity. We have great friendship, he and I and our countries. And I think it's only going to get closer. But it's very important that we remain united as countries. We're friends and we're going to stay that way.
I don't like that we're watching this in real time and not watching the so sorry version of events that will inevitably be shown, which is probably going to be the real truth of the matter.
We're going to do a really good job. We've done a fantastic job for the American people. We had a great 4 years and we were interrupted by terrible administration, absolutely terrible. They didn't know what they were doing, and now we're putting it back together, and I think it's going to end up being much stronger than it was before, even much stronger than it was before.
President Trump, first of all, congratulations for the fantastic 24 days of your presidency. Historic and unprecedented decisions that you made, transformational reforms. I'm particularly impressed by the expose on USAID. And I would like you to share with us if you think USAID had a role in election interference in the US in 2020 and Indian elections in 2024.
So it could have had a role. There were a lot of bad things that happened in 2020. I think bad things happened in 2024, but it was too big to rig. We won by a tremendous margin. We won every swing state. We won the popular
This is my favorite thing that Trump does, when he just makes a foreign leader sit there and just responds to like the dumbest questions possible that have nothing to do with the foreign nation. And they just have to kind of sit there and be like, very cool. He does this every single time. It's amazing.
Well, but, we had a great 2016. We had a much better 2020 election, but bad things happened. And we had the best of all. We had, they say, the most consequential in history, 129 years. most consequential. So it was a great election, and it gives me a chance to work again with the Prime Minister and India. And we're going to have a great relationship together.
Do you see India playing a role in your plan to broker a peace in Ukraine? And if I could ask you about a development in your hometown today, the U.S. attorney has resigned over the DOJ's request to drop the case into Eric Adams. Did you personally request the Justice Department to drop that case?
No, I didn't. I know nothing about it. I did not. I think that, just to answer your other question, we're just going to get along well. We're going to get along with all countries. We're going to do very well. We're going to be doing, I think, record business, record numbers. And we're going to work with India also. We have some very big trade deals to announce in the very near future.
आपको लग रहा है कि जिस शांति की बात आप करते आए थे उसमें अब भारत रूस और यूक्रेन को युद्ध खत्म कराने के लिए अमेरिका के साथ
India is not at all involved in Ukraine is a crazy thing to say, considering that any time there's sanctions, India becomes a secondary market to basically continue trade with the recipients of said sanctions. So no, they play a very formative role.
Soros, and what is the role that the deep state played in the situation in Bangladesh?
Well, there was no role for our deep state. It was.
Yeah, India is buying Russian oil to sell to the West, and the West is okay with that. Exactly.
For a long time, and has been worked on for hundreds of years. Frankly, I've been reading about it, but I will leave Bangladesh to the Prime Minister.
Oh, he's doing the Illuminati hand gesture chatter. You're right. Stay woke.
रूस और यूक्रेन के बीच की लड़ाई का सवाल मुझे खुशी है राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने शांति के प्रयासों का इनिशिएटिव लिया। दुनिया का एक सोच रही है कि भारत न्यूट्रल है। भारत न्यूट्रल नहीं है। भारत का अपना पक्ष है। भारत का पक्ष है शांति। हम पहले दिन से ही और मैंने राष्ट्रपति पुतिन को उनकी मौजूदगी में मीडिया के सामने कहा था कि ये समय युद्ध का नहीं है और मेरा एक कन्विक्शन है कि समस्याओं का समाधान युद्ध के मैदानों में नहीं निकलता है, वो टेबल पर चर्चा करके ही निकलता है।
As far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned, I'm very happy that President Trump has taken initiatives to restore peace and had telephone calls with President Putin and President Zelensky. The world had this thinking that India somehow is a neutral country in this whole process, but this is not true. India has a side, and that side is of peace. From the very first day, I have been talking about the importance of dialogue and diplomacy and a peaceful solution. And when I met President Putin in the presence of media, I had told him that this is not the era of war, and I have firm conviction that problems cannot be resolved on the battlefield.
You're actually wrong. Our Sir Modi Vishwaguru ji actually stopped the war in Ukraine by telling both Russia and Ukraine that war is bad. My bad. My bad. The BJP ran a campaign during the 2024 general elections where they said Modi stopped the war between Ukraine and Russia. He did. Dang, this chat is so racist. Wait, what's racist about?
And I think we went a long way toward getting a solution to the horrible war where so many people are being killed, especially soldiers on the battlefield.
I think you guys are misunderstanding. My chatters are making fun of the fascist hogs in India by explaining what the Modi campaign did that was a lie.
Tomorrow there's a meeting in Munich. And then next week there's a
Also, there's Indian Hasanabi heads in here, including Arun.
Top officials. And Ukraine will be a part of it too. And we're going to see if we can end that war. That war is a horrible war. It's a vicious, bloody war. We want to end it. To your other question, that U.S. attorney was actually fired.
Also, saying that this community is hateful towards Indians is pretty funny. When, this is one of the few communities, as is the case with everything else, that actually tries to the best of their ability, combat anti-Indian sentiment. Anywhere else on the internet that you go to, as many of the Indian Hasanabi heads will openly admit, you can't even show an Indian person without literally the entirety of chat saying the most heinous, hateful shit possible. Like, it's crazy.
Very big elements today of success. I call it an element of success. Reciprocal tariffs, so that somebody charges us, we charge them the same amount, which has never been done in our country before. We've always been taken advantage of by other
Some
countries.
Indian
We
hogs
allow
think
that
Trump
to
is a
happen.
secret Muslim. Oh, I love that.
We can, we're not going to allow that any longer. So I think we're going to do very well. We've been doing they say the last 3 weeks was among the best 3 weeks.
That Nokia phone ringtone is basically bringing me back to my childhood. I haven't heard that shit since I left Turkey, dude.
Even the Prime Minister mentioned it. I think
Almost
other
all
countries
of
are
my
looking
phones
at it.
were Nokia.
I just want to thank everybody
Growing
for
up.
being here. This is a terrific man. We're going to make some wonderful trade deals for India and for the U.S. And thank you all very much. Thank you.
Are a lot of haters just people with a punish king who can only pay attention to the news if a daddy figure is yelling at them during it? Yes. All right. They're kicking the press out so they can make out, so they can kiss. All right. Let's get back to Trump and Pootie Poo.
That he'll come here and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia.
Russian troops currently control about 20% of Ukrainian territory. Trump suggested Russia deserves to keep some of it as part of any deal.
They took a lot of land, and
Russia deserves to keep a little bit of land. Come on, guys. Once again, ridiculous statement being said openly. The quiet part out loud. That's it.
they fought for that land and they lost a lot of.
Like I like that he's presenting it as a pro-Russian position. Like he's saying it like, well, you know, they fought hard for that land. They deserve to keep it, which is a ridiculous way to communicate what's going on. And the obvious way to communicate what's going on would be, yeah, if you want to end this endless conflict where people are dying nonstop, then you're going to have to make concessions. I can't control Vladimir Putin. He's a foreign adversary. And we're going to try to make sure that we have the best possible deal for the Ukrainians. But instead, because he's Trump, he's just like, they fought. Fair is fair. They fought long and hard. At least he stays consistent being pro-Russia and pro-Israel. I mean, true. He's like, yeah, might is right, folks. Lame ass take. You clearly don't have any respect for the long-lived institution of finders keepers. Yeah. Like he could just be like, listen, it's a fucking meat grinder, and the incredible amount of territorial seizure that Russia engaged in is completely unjustifiable, but there's nothing I can do about it. At the end of the day, you know, I don't want more Ukrainians to die, do you? That could be a reasonable position that he could arrive at. Instead, him being Donald Trump turns around and says, guess what? Russia fought really hard for this land, and they called dibs. So we're going to give it to them.
They lost a lot of soldiers.
It was a big shift from his predecessor's public position.
I want to be very clear about this. The United States will never, never, never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory.
Speaking in Brussels, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth dealt another blow to Ukraine's ambitions.
The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement.
Like, this is not a blow. That's not a blow at all. That's just a reaffirmation of the truth. It's like if you presented Anthony Blinken coming out and saying that Taiwan is a part of China, which is the long-standing American position, okay? And then being like, this is a real blow to the liberatory efforts in Taiwan. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I hate Pete Hegseth, but him mentioning that as the official position is not a change in our commitment. That's not, it's ridiculous.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons argued all of this hurts Ukraine's bargaining position.
Secretary Hegseth should reread The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, because it is the worst possible negotiation.
Yeah, I think they're mostly angry on the aesthetic grounds. Like, look, walks back his statement yesterday that a negotiated settlement is not likely to end Ukraine and NATO. These negotiations are led by real Donald Trump. Everything is on the table. In his conversations with Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, what he decides to allow or not is at the purview of the leader of the free world, President Trump. So I'm not going to stand at this podium and declare what President Trump will do or won't do, what will be in or what will be out, what concessions will be made or what concessions are not made. But him openly stating that at most is causing anger and division amongst the national security apparatus, because they're like, well, why are you saying it out loud? That's it. That's it. Even though they have said it on numerous occasions through both back channels and also openly to the media. Donald Trump has also said that. And so have previous administrations as well.
To give away two of the most important deal points before they even start negotiations.
Trump's new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, did send a pro-Ukraine message while meeting in Kyiv with President Vladimir Zelensky.
We believe. Sometimes it feels like liberals want the administration to lie to them. You know what I mean? They're like, why aren't you just like lying? Why are you saying what is like already the official policy? Why are you openly admitting that? Like, why can't you just lie to us and whisper sweet nothings into our ear? I wanted to clarify I'm an Indian Hasanabi head too. The racist comments were referring to some of the chats about the interpreters' accents and why Modi doesn't speak English. Modi does speak English. Many Indians speak English, Modi included. He just doesn't speak English in that official setting, I suspect. Modi probably speaks better English than like 50% of Americans. Most Indians speak better English than most Americans. India is the largest English-speaking country on the planet. Okay, you are reaching. I mean, Modi speaks significantly worse English than his predecessors. Lots of Indian leaders don't speak English well, and that's fine. No, not the second largest. India is the largest English-speaking country on the planet. It's a second language, obviously. That's a reach. I'm sorry. Wait, what? No. I think there are more English. There's a larger English-speaking population in India, even though it is the second language. Or wait, is it total English speakers? No, not as a. I think there's more. I don't think this is correct. I think there's more English speakers in India. This is rigged. They're lying. They're lying and claiming that there's less Indians that speak English. I don't believe this. By total numbers, I thought India was the number one. Some dumbass just said British. It's British English, so it doesn't count. Okay, that wasn't a dumbass. That was correct. You were just given the facts. I don't believe it. Okay, it's fake news. Guess what? Figures are from the 2022 American Community Survey, 5-year estimates by the U.S. Census Bureau for persons ages up to 5 and older. 2024 estimate figures for population in first, second, and third languages. English as a first language is only spoken by 259,000 people, as a second language by 182 million, and as a third language by 45 million. It's not just British colonialization, by the way. English is used as a link language for all the ethnic groups of India, especially in South India. We all speak English to one another. We're thinking of China for the highest number of English speakers? No. It's not China, even though China does have a significant number of English as a second language speakers. I think it's it's not China at all. It's mixed. It is mixed. Plenty of Sri Lankan and Indian immigrants here in Japan speak either English or American English, depending on their home schools. When have you heard a fully Indian person from India in India speaking good English? What are you talking about? Yeah, but most of them are illiterate at it, just like everyone else's second language. I love when a fucking dumbass Westoid who barely is legible, barely literate, is talking shit, okay? Is talking shit about Indian dudes in fucking India knowing like 4 languages off the rip, okay? Just letting their freak flag fly up in this bitch. Respect, dude. Jesus Christ. Oh, do they have an accent? I guess they're not literate then. That's what he means, by the way. Is that the dudes have an accent, so they're not actually literate in English. Law is such a weird hill to die on, Hassan. Why do you have to lie about what? I mean, I'm memeing when I say it's India's number one in English speaking. I'll concede that I'm wrong on this. That America has more English speakers than India does, for sure. But as far as like an impressive number of Indians speaking English, like that is just the fact. Also, yeah, why do you think the H-1B visa conversation is about like Indian tech workers? What the fuck? Why do you think? It's because a shit ton of Indians speak English. The list with the first, second language is the list with the first, second, third language speakers is India, US, Pakistan, Nigeria, Philippines. Damn, Pinoy gang, rise up. According to available data, around 12% of the Indian population speaks English. It is important to note that English is not the first language for the majority of Indians. It is primarily spoken as a second language. No, English is not the most spoken language in India. Hindi is the language with the most significant number of speakers, making 43.63% of the population. However, English remains an important language in India as an official language and is widely used in education and politics. If you ever watch code tutorial videos in Hindi, you can understand like half of the video because they switch back and forth from Hindi to English so much. Robin Banks, thank you for the 10 gifted subs, by the way. That Hindi statistic is also misleading. It's not actually 46%. Hold on. Doors open. Hindu nationalists are fudging the numbers. I can see that. The Hindi statistic is also misleading. It's not actually 46%. It's much lower than that. The Indian government just calls a bunch of languages Hindi. That makes sense. I can see that. All right, let's get back to Volodymyr Zelensky.
That this is an important signal to the world, to the Russian leadership, that we stand together.
But back in D.C., Trump was non-committal when asked if he viewed Zelensky as an equal partner in negotiations with him and Putin.
What do you say to people who think that Trump is a Russian/Putin's puppet? I say to them that they should keep believing that, because then they won't recognize that he is actually Xi Jinping's puppet. You had wrong information. Modi did not finish school, bro. That's why he doesn't speak English. And if you look at literacy rates in India, it varies by a wide margin on state-to-state basis. Even those Indians study English throughout school, verbal communication through English is very bad. I'm saying this as a South Indian. You had wrong information.
It's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace.
The White House yesterday revealed more details about the deal that led to the release of American schoolteacher Mark Fogel from a Russian prison. In exchange, we now know the Trump administration has agreed to send convicted money launderer Alexander Vinnik back to Russia. Vinnik was arrested in 2017 on charges of fraud using cryptocurrency. Tony?
Nancy, thank you very much.
Vladimir Putin responds to strength. In 2014, he invaded Crimea, not during the presidency of Donald Trump. Over 4 years, there was no Russian aggression from 2016 to 2020. In 2022, Vladimir Putin took aggression on Ukraine. Once again, not while President Trump was president of the United States. So any suggestion that President Trump is doing anything other than negotiating from a position of strength is on its face ahistorical and false. So when you look at what he may have to give or take, what's in or what's out in those negotiations, we have the perfect deal maker at the table from a position of strength to deal with both Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. No one's going to get everything that they want, understanding who committed the aggression in the first place. But I challenge anyone else to think of a world leader at this moment who, with credibility and strength, could bring those two leaders to the table and forge a durable peace that ultimately serves the interests of Ukraine, stops the killing and the death, which Trump has been clear he wants to do, and hopefully ultimately is guaranteed by strength of Europeans who are there prepared to back it up.
Why not invoke Article 5 then for the NATO peacekeeping forces that could potentially be deployed? How does that deter President Putin?
Well, I would say, I want to be clear about something as it pertains to NATO membership not being realistic outcome for negotiations. That's something that was stated as part of my remarks here, as part of a coordination with how we're executing these ongoing negotiations, which are led by President Trump. All of that said, these negotiations are led by President Trump. Everything is on the table in his conversations with Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. What he decides to allow or not allow is at the purview of the leader of the free world, of President Trump. So I'm not going to stand at this podium and declare what President Trump will do or won't do, what will be in or what will be out, what concessions will be made or what concessions are not made. I can look, as our team has, of what's realistic, likely on an outcome. I think realism is an important part of the conversation that hasn't existed enough inside conversations amongst friends. But simply pointing out realism, like the borders won't be rolled back to what everybody would like them to be in 2014, is not a concession to Vladimir Putin. It's a recognition of the hard power realities on the ground after a lot of investment and sacrifice, first by the Ukrainians and then by allies, and then a realization that a negotiated peace is going to be some sort of demarcation that neither side wants. But it's not my job as the Secretary of Defense to define the parameters of the President of the United States.
Wait, what? Isn't it literally his job?
Complex and consequential negotiations in the world.
So, Sean, on this problem for NATO, and it clearly is a problem, will they be reassured by what people...
It definitely is a part of his job. What the fuck? Nah, it's definitely a part of your job, man. No, he is a Fox News anchor. Okay, well, that remains true. Although he is a Fox News anchor first and foremost, like as it stands, as the secretary, as the head of the Defense Department, it's definitely a part of his job. Damn. Well, this is what happens in a DEI free zone, you know? Thank God we abolished DEI so we could put competent and effective leadership in charge so that they could say stuff like, oh, it's not my job. It's the job of the president, who is the glorious supreme leader.
Pete Hegseth was saying that America remains committed to NATO.
One of the things that when I was listening through that, you can't help picking out that actually Pete Hegseth was making great.
I'm not saying the Defense Department is supposed to be making these decisions independent of the executive. I'm just simply stating that it definitely, when you communicate things like that, it comes across as though you have already had these conversations with the executive and you're just, mentioning what the position of the leadership looks like, which I suspect he did anyway. And now he's just kind of falling on the proverbial sword because people are yelling at the admin. So yelling works? I mean, yelling is definitely worse to a certain degree with this administration that responds to negativity.
Overtures to say how strong he thought NATO was, how he committed to NATO, and President Trump was, because European leaders have been a little bit worried about whether Trump is going to walk away from it. But he was absolutely clear. Though he majored on this money side, he mentioned on the defence industrial base that had to be there. I'm less worried about the 5% number that was going out there. President Trump's famous for stretching the elastic band pretty hard. And actually, even when he was asked about that in the news conference, he backpedaled about 5% and said, America's spending a lot more than this. But I suspect 3% is the actual number. The trouble is I'm a veteran of the Cold War, and however much the European nations may worry about a number that's north of 2.5%, we were spending over 4% in the Cold War, and it feels like a more dangerous world. And we've had 35 years of not spending. So I think that message resonates, and we've still got, his point is, there's still a third of NATO members that are failing to pay the 2%. And what I think we're getting closer to is the point at which Mark Rutte has to turn around and go, you either pay or you don't enjoy the benefits. If you're not going to pay your premiums, you can't enjoy the benefits that NATO membership provides.
Right, and just briefly on Ukraine itself, are they right to be worried that a deal could be done over their heads that involves giving away chunks of their territory?
I'm less worried about that at the moment because it's not entirely clear what President Trump's role is in this. America is not at war with Russia. Russia is at war with Ukraine. So what is exactly that actually he's negotiating with President Putin? I think one of the things will be he wants to distance himself from President Biden. He wants to say NATO's off the table, because Putin was clearly worried about NATO getting closer to Russia's border. And he also said that the issue of territory probably was an unrealistic ambition. And although everybody gasps at that...
These guys also always play catch-up, just like the rest of the world. Like, why was this never a point of contention or a point of consideration when Biden was president? Like, what, all of a sudden now they're like, oh, well, for Vladimir Putin, NATO was always off the table. Okay. Why are you saying that now? Was that not the case initially? I don't understand.
Most recent conversations that Sky's had with President Zelensky have turned around.
I know you're against Trump and Elon, but why is auditing the government seen as a bad thing? Because that's not what they're doing, okay? If you think that they're, quote unquote, auditing the government to find like wasteful expenditures and fraud, you've fallen into the marketing campaign that isn't even like that good, really. Why is it that so many people refuse critical thinking or the very simple notion that your government officials, no matter what their background is, are most likely fucking lying to you when it's a goddamn Republican in charge? Everybody understands this reality when it's the fucking Democrats, but for some stupid reason, no one ever understands that the government officials have the capacity to lie to you just as the Democrats do. When it's the goddamn Republicans doing it. All of the free thinkers, dude. This is before we consider that there's already a pre-existing service that audits the government regardless and is way better equipped at finding inefficiencies than a bunch of random dudes who are 19 years old on Adderall, fucking keyword searching woke and DEI. and just hitting delete.
And said, look, he doesn't think that's reasonable. What I was a little bit concerned about was that Trump seems to have given away a few of his negotiating cards already. And I suspect that, President Trump has been making big overtures about Panama Canal, about Greenland, about Israel and Gaza. I suspect we've got to look beyond the rhetoric. And all of this, I suspect, is just using it as America focusing on China, UK and the EU sort out the continent.
On Russian state television, the tone was triumphant. An historic shift in relations was how this anchor described the phone call. Another told viewers to feel the difference. But officially, at least, Moscow's not celebrating yet. Russia's foreign minister even suggested the world has overreacted.
I was struck by the fact that the entire world has fallen into a kind of stupor. They were stunned when a normal, basic conversation between two well-mannered, polite people took place.
It's not that polite to invade your neighbour, but it seems Vladimir Putin will be rewarded, securing concessions on territory and NATO membership before peace talks have even begun. And then there's the prospect of another face-to-face meeting. Helsinki before, Saudi Arabia next, we're told, and then possibly Moscow. If Donald Trump does come to Moscow, it would be a very big win indeed for the Kremlin, because ever since Russia invaded Ukraine nearly 3 years ago, the West has sought to isolate Vladimir Putin and cast him as a pariah. But the image of him shaking hands with the American president here in the Russian capital would shatter that altogether. Plenty to chew over then at Moscow's California diner, where opinions are split on how many should be at the table.
Well, it doesn't depend on only two presidents. There should be at least three sides. The other side should also agree to this.
I'm for negotiations. I really like that at least bridges are being built for these negotiations. And I think that it is very useful for everyone.
Ukraine would beg to differ. Fast food and fast diplomacy is not to everyone's tastes. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Just after the morning rush hour, central Munich. Scenes that pour fuel on Germany's political disputes over immigration, with the far right soaring in the polls ahead of the most significant general election since reunification. A child's pram and a shoe lie crushed in the street. 28 people rushed to hospital after someone, later confirmed to be a failed Afghan asylum seeker, had rammed his car into a crowd.
A car crashed into the back of a demonstration. We saw the whole thing. They were walking along the whole street, and when they crossed the intersection, a car drove into the back of the crowd.
As an arrest video emerged, the German Chancellor was forced to comment on the divisive issue currently haunting German politics. The alleged attacker, who'd come to Germany as an unaccompanied minor, reportedly had his asylum application rejected nearly a decade ago. So why was he still in the country?
This perpetrator cannot count on any leniency. He must be punished and he must leave the country.
He'd also reportedly been in trouble with the police for drugs and theft, but whether he was operating alone or part of a group isn't yet known.
At the moment, we can neither rule out nor confirm other perpetrators. There are no leads at the moment. The background is currently being investigated.
There have been several lethal attacks by newcomers to Germany in the last few years. 6 died when a Saudi man drove into a Christmas market in Magdeburg.
Okay, the Saudi man was literally an anti-Islam AfD supporter and was not a newcomer to Germany. That's crazy. This, of course, is going to absolutely ignite the same fear-mongering that already existed, which is truly beneficial for AfD's purposes in general.
He turned out to be a far-right anti-Islam activist who'd renounced his faith. Still, Germany's insurgent far-right party, the AfD, say these acts of extreme violence are precisely why their controversial policy of remigration is so popular. The AfD leader, Alice Weidel, who's been courting support from Hungarian hardliner Viktor Orban, today repeated her Trumpian demands for mass deportations to reverse the immigration started by Angela Merkel in 2015.
Meine Pflichten.
The AfD...
It's crazy because I said this yesterday. Like I just said, Everyone in Western Europe has made fun of Viktor Orban, and every single country is going to have little Viktor Orbans prop up left and right. Terrifying predicament. What should Germans do about the terror attacks? I mean, it's always the same. Violence is violence, chatter. You address the needs of the population. That's it. Unless you're asking that question because you personally think that like there is something different to the Islamic style violence that's taken place or some shit. You know? Contrary to the initial information, the suspect had a residence and work permit. This was reported in German media at 8:17. This deportation agitation in German media was completely off the rails today. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because it plays a role in propping up the most like right-wing positions possible. The media loves hitting the panic drums. Social Democrats have failed to fight fascism. In many cases, helped accelerate it while being the most smug, out-of-touch people on the planet. Yeah.
They are currently polling second, but are unlikely to assume power as Germany's main parties refuse to work with them. Meanwhile, to Munich enter US Vice President J.D. Vance and a multitude of other world leaders for the Global Security Conference. On the agenda, Russia, the Middle East, and much more. But today's carnage provokes more immediate questions, for it also emerged this afternoon that police had foiled an attempted bomb attack on an asylum shelter near Dresden by someone described as a German national. How will today's events affect the election in 10 days' time?
Hamas says it will move forward with the next hostage release Saturday as part of the ceasefire deal with Israel. This comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is threatening to end the ceasefire if Hamas doesn't free all 9 living hostages it agreed to release in phase 1 of the agreement. Now Hamas says Egyptian and Qatari mediators will work to, quote, remove obstacles and close gaps to allow the exchange to happen. Foreign correspondent Britt Clennett joins me live from Jerusalem. Britt, what's the latest on this ceasefire deal and this pending exchange of hostages and Palestinian prisoners? And what are these obstacles that still have to be removed?
Hi, Diane. Yeah, positive signs that this will go ahead as planned. Hamas saying that it is committed to implementing the ceasefire deal and will continue releasing the hostages within the agreed time frame. That follows talks in Cairo, Hamas, and saying that Egyptian and Qatari mediators had decided, as you say, to remove obstacles to the deal. There was no immediate comment from Israel. Obviously, both sides up until now have been accusing each other of violating the ceasefire deal, and there was a lot of concern from both major stakeholders.
This article confirms the misinfo before and explains more. Please read so people know chatter was right. Summary at the top. Germany Munich car attack injures 30. Suspect detained. At least 30 people were injured after a car drove into a trade union march in Munich. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for the suspect, an Afghan national legally in Germany, to be deported. Police say the suspected perpetrator, an Afghan national, was detained at the scene. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for the suspect to be deported. Opposition leader Friedrich Merz said something has to change. The Taliban say they are prepared to cooperate on deportations in return for consular presence in Germany. Contrary to earlier reports, Bavarian ministers have said that the suspect was not subject to deportation and was in possession of a valid residency permit. Weidel says under the AfD, the man wouldn't have been here in the first place. Alice Weidel, the chancellor candidate for the far-right Alternative for Deutschland, insisted that the 24-year-old Afghan national detained on suspicion of driving his car into a trade union march in Munich on Thursday would have never entered Germany had her party been in power. Weidel placed the blame for the incident at the door of the Bavarian premier, Markus Söder, saying the question which politicians need to face, especially Söder, is what was the man even doing here? These guys, I think, get so horny anytime an instance of mass violence occurs. They're like, oh, hell yeah, it's time. It's time to use this as our opportunity. Why didn't the media cover the Swedish mass shooter? Because he was white. The media did cover it. But just briefly. And unfortunately, the reality of the matter is that right-wing sentiment is what dominates polite discourse and just discourse in general. When it's a far-right white guy doing an act of terror, then it's like, oh, well, it's a lone wolf. Why are you politicizing this? There's nothing to be said about the right-wing radicalization. When it's a random Muslim person, okay, or an Afghan refugee, they're like, oh, this is how they all are. Notice that nobody says this is how they all are about white people. Obviously, because that's not the case. Just like that's not the case for the millions of Muslim refugees that work and live normal lives in Germany every single day, in spite of the anti-Islam sentiment that you hear from many German politicians.
The Gazans, who have endured more than a year of suffering, and the hostage family.
Don't spread misinfo. There's no known agenda yet. The Deutsche Welle article is misleading. He doesn't have permanent residency. In fact, his asylum application got rejected at first. He had a restricted residency, and he was only allowed to stay by formality because they didn't decide whether they will extend his residency. Yeah. The Swedish fellow disappeared from the news. Yeah. The initial coverage also had like photos of like a random Arab-looking person too. And then, yeah, when they realized the dude was white, they were like, okay, never mind, my B. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm not saying this is like there is a intrinsic quality to violence that only impacts like white people or some shit. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply explaining that everyone is capable of violence, okay? Right-wingers specifically are very capable of violence. And oftentimes, what? Can you address repeating mass murders in Germany without calling people racist, fascist? This is becoming disrespectful for non-immigrants. White people are also humans, you know? I love that right-wingers pretend that the only solution to an act of terror is by being Islamophobic. Like that's, you're making it seem as though if you fucking say, you know, this is just Islam, this is how all Muslims are, then you magically solve this fucking problem. You're an idiot. What are you talking about? Yes. People ask me, how do you fix this problem? And I tell them it's the same principle. All instances of violence like this, with the exception of like the antisocial personality disorder caused instances of violence, are solvable through addressing the material problems that people have. Okay, this is not a unique position. This is just the truth. That's it. Also, this guy said white people are human too, as though I, a white man, don't think that.
Families who say that time is running out to release their loved ones. We spoke to Edith Ahel. She's the mother of Alon, who is still held in Gaza. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I feel bound by myself. I think I can't do anything with it. I have no control over that. I have to be positive for Alon, and I am.
Wait, it's not Muslims from India, Pakistan, Indonesia, etc. It's always Middle Easterners. Yo, this is my goat. Is this an Indian Muslim who says like violence only happens? This is a hyper specific. This is an advanced form of racism that I had not encountered before. Is this guy an Indian Muslim who says like, nah, you don't understand. It's only the MENA Muslims that do this shit. That's awesome. I mean, this is cool. I cherish this kind of thing. This new versions of racism when all the previous versions of racism are outdated. Respect. I love that. The funniest and coolest thing that I also encounter is that the overwhelming majority of like insanely white supremacist accounts are run by like Indian dudes or like dudes from Malaysia, like Radio Genoa, being like, we need to make sure that the West maintains its white superiority. And the dude is just Indian. The dude saying that is an Indian guy. Amazing. Wait, why'd you ban this guy? He's popping up. I want to hear more from this guy. Indian racism hits different. It's like, while virtually every other type of racist despises Indians very openly and in the grossest ways possible, there was a chatter who earlier said that they are Indian and Muslim, and they've gotten far more hatred for being Indian than being Muslim online. Because for some reason, like, racists really fucking hate Indian people. But then you got Indian people who are doing their own version of racism, not oblivious to the ways in which white supremacists despise them, but still, like, they will just consistently maintain the position that like they are the true Aryans and that they're basically white, and they always have the coolest, newest type of bigotry that I've never encountered. It's unironically, as a racism sommelier, I do find it fascinating. Like, it is truly fascinating. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of the way that Turkish hogs operate too, because they're always like, we're not Arab. We're above that. Are you kidding me? We're a superior race. We're Turks. And Somalis do this a little bit too, for sure. If that's what you're talking about, unless you're making a joke about me saying racism sommelier, like a wine connoisseur. I'm a racism connoisseur. Turks do this all the time as well, not realizing that the Western world does not see them as white at all, or they'll get like really mad. Really interesting dynamic.
I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that I am okay and that I am continuing to fight for him, do advocacy and everything I need to do.
I'm a
to make
racism
sure
sommelier is wild. No, it's not. It's just the truth, man. I'm a connoisseur.
that he comes home. But in that situation, I try to take care of myself and I try to be positive and faithful and with a lot of hope that this will come over and they will not forget, not him and not the other hostages that are still in Gaza.
They're very much relieved that her son is still alive because she got word from two of the other hostages who were in the last release that he is alive but in bad conditions, they said. At the same time, she wants to sustain pressure on the authorities and make sure that this ceasefire holds so that her son can come out, as well as the 70-plus hostages still held in Gaza. Remember, there are 6 Americans also still held in Gaza.
Britt, meanwhile, U.S. officials could face international warrants if steps are taken to displace Palestinians in Gaza. The International Criminal Court has jurisdictions over Palestinian territories there. So what are you watching for on that front?
Yeah, so if this plan goes ahead, if steps are taken,
that'd be so
certainly
sick.
The ICC says that U.S. officials could face arrest and prosecution, but the experts we speak to say that Americans are pretty much buffered from it because they don't recognize ICC jurisdiction. However, one expert said that the court can issue arrest warrants for Americans whose actions in Gaza and the West Bank violate international law. Now, that can be the case if an ICC prosecutor investigation finds reasonable grounds, they say, to believe that specific individuals perpetrated crimes in those areas. So certainly.
Oh my God, I'm gonna nut. See, that's how you really fucking know when someone's a hater. Okay? None of this Yair Lapid bullshit where he was like, oh, I hate Benjamin Netanyahu, but also fuck the ICC. Like, no, dude. I welcome the International Criminal Court in following the letter of the law and potentially prosecuting American leadership for objectively what amounts to international crimes against humanity in their active defense of ethnic displacement. I'm with you, baby. I'm with you all day, every day. That's how you know when motherfuckers in Israel are like, oh, we're the opposition party, but we hate the ICC. Because how dare they say that the guy that we supposedly despise, Benjamin Netanyahu, is a war criminal. Yeah, you ain't with it. You're not a real one. I am. Apologize to liberals and support the international rules. First of all, I, unlike my liberal counterparts, am actually an advocate for international rules and laws. The problem is liberals are not an advocate for international rules and laws. I am. Yeah, it's funny to say that libs actually care about international law when, you know, Biden was a serial violator and also actively did genocide. America already lost. The ICC would never do this 10 years ago. Oh, yeah, 100%. The ICC even like saying that they could possibly do this is crazy.
Another layer of this, but the rights groups that we speak to say that really the concern should be on this being raised in the first place and the chaos that it's sowing here and how it is compromising the deal.
All right, foreign correspondent Britt Clennett in Jerusalem, thank you.
A judge has cleared the way for the buyout offer for more than 2 million federal workers, rejecting a lawsuit that had put that plan on hold, and scores of federal workers are already being fired. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is at the White House. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. Well, dozens of lawsuits have been filed, but this does mark the first major victory for the Trump administration. A judge declaring that buyout program can move forward. And this morning, the offer is officially closed.
Overnight, a stark message from Elon Musk.
So what you do every day is stuff your face and spew out propaganda. This is what you have to be, guys, to make bread nowadays. Endgame dystopia. Even if you grasp the idea that peace can be achieved without ensuing chaos into it, you will still have a sour taste in your mouth. It can't just be that simple to be, right? What? Why can't you just operate on the fucking limitations of your brain processing power? Why do you have to act like you're much smarter than you actually are? Virtually everyone understands that you said nothing, okay? Endgame dystopia. Oh my God, this guy stuffs his face and spews out propaganda. Just speak normal, okay? As far as stuffing my face, yes, dude, I'm a human being. And within the hours of 2 p.m. Pacific, to 4 p.m. Pacific, you can catch me eating food. Okay? I'm live for 7 hours a day minimum. Okay? And yes, in that 7-hour block, there's going to be moments where I'm eating. That's number one. Number two, in terms of spewing propaganda, what am I talking about? What have I said that you consider propaganda in a pejorative way? What have I said that you consider to be wrong? Why can't you address any of the things I'm saying and instead, I don't know, complain about me eating food? Do you think that the International Criminal Court should not actually try to hold America accountable? Do you think that the current American president saying we are going to forcibly displace 2 million ethnic indigenous Palestinians from their ancestral homelands is not, to the exact definition, a genocidal ambition? That's it. That's what it is. If that's not genocide, then there's no such thing as genocide. Also, he unfollowed, so he can't even say anything now. No, he drafted this in a sad Discord server, and his fellow freaks hyped him up enough to hit send. Yeah.
Damn, this guy's good.